Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace, episode 246. It's been so long.
Is it?
It is 246. We did 245 about a month ago, a little less than a month ago. It feels like an eternity since we've done a show, Matt. For those of you who don't know, who are maybe just tuning into the stream, I have been going through some crazy medical issues, medical scare, medical emergency. I don't know what words you want to use to describe it. I know the words that I use to describe it. Effing sucks is the way that I describe it. It's been a nightmare. Some of you guys have followed along on our Patreon or on sifted.net, so you kind of know what's been going on. For those of you who don't know, and a lot of people didn't because our Patreon dropped like a ton on March 1st, and I'm guessing people were just like, hey, it looks like they quit making GameFace or whatever. I've been having like crazy issues, been going to doctors for a month now, specialists for a month now. They still don't have it figured out. A big problem is that you can't get appointments with doctors and specialists because of COVID. Everything is just backed up like months and months.
I mean, it's like that even when there is no COVID.
That's true, but it's way worse now.
Yeah, I'm sure. But like it does sound familiar to me about when I had the thing that might have been cancer, and they're like, oh yeah, come back in 3 months. I was like, I'd like to know now, please.
Yeah, it's hard.
Just how it is. It's a mess.
It is a mess. And unfortunately, I'm caught up in it. My symptoms have been all over the place. I've been having like body temperature control issues. I've been having like tightness in my chest, not chest pain, like tightness in my chest. It's really bizarre. That is one thing that has never gone away. In fact, I'm feeling it right now. And they can't figure out what that is. I've been having like headaches, lightheadedness. They've done a ton of tests. My levels were way off on everything, like everything. So I've been taking these crazy vitamins that they told me to take. I've been taking supplements. It's been a disaster and a nightmare, honestly. I am feeling a little better. I wouldn't be here if I weren't feeling better because the first couple of weeks I really thought I could like die at any minute. So I just want to give you full warning right now. There's a chance that maybe we end this stream early. If I start getting symptoms, I'm just going to end it. But I'm going to try to power through. We have a big show today, actually, because it's been a month. And we haven't brought a bunch of topics into the show from like the last 3 weeks. Most of the stuff is from the last week. There's one game that I had played and Matt had played that was supposed to be in 246 way back when it was initially planned that we're still going to talk about. But for the most part, it's all stuff.
I can remember it.
If I had, you know what, Matt? I had to like waiting to do the show. I had to like watch the B-roll and like jog my memory because it's been a while since I had played it. But most of the stuff in today's show is going to be from the last week or so. And there's been a lot of stuff going on in the last week or so, which is kind of crazy for late February, early March. I see a lot of people are giving us Twitch Prime. There's really too many for me to announce live on the show because you guys haven't been on the stream in a month. So everybody is hooking us up with Twitch Prime. Really appreciate that. As I said, our Patreon dropped huge at the turn of the month. I do want to thank some people. People have been giving us donations to try to offset that, which has been awesome. Some people went and upped their pledges to try to offset it, but I knew it wasn't going to be enough, and it wasn't. But still, I really appreciate the people who have tried to help and who are trying to help. I'm hoping we can keep doing this every week. If I keep feeling like I am right now, we will. The show may end up being shorter some weeks than you're used to, maybe not the full 3 hours. We'll see if I can make it through the full 3 hours today. But again, I just really want to thank everybody for all their concern, all the heartfelt message that I've been sent on Twitter, on Sifted, on Patreon, on YouTube. You guys have all been great. There are going to be some changes for me. We're going to start focusing on like 3 shows, really. We're going to focus on GameFace, obviously, Pactor Factor, and our new podcast called 3 Night Weekend. I just can't keep doing this. I basically have almost killed myself working, is what has happened. And I can't keep doing it. So there are going to be some changes, but GameFace is going to stay strong, and it's going to be a big part of anything we do going forward. And it's good to be back, and it's good to have all you guys on the stream and be back with the family a little bit because it's very isolating dealing with all this kind of on my own in a pandemic. My wife's there, obviously, and she's been amazing, to be perfectly honest. But otherwise, it's been very isolating going through this, and it's good to be back on the stream with all you guys. Let's see. what else do we got before we get going? I don't think much. We have 10 topics today, and that's a lot to try to get through, particularly in my condition. So I don't want to spend too much time just messing around. But again, Twitch Prime just keeps rolling in. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. The hype train already hit level 5. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Again, the Twitch Prime money for us makes a huge difference, and we need it. So thanks for doing that. And with that, let's kick off the show. We're going to start things off with a game called Outriders. We've talked about it before on the show. And it is a shooter from Square Enix, and it's made by the studio called People Can Fly. If you don't remember them, they're the team that made Bulletstorm. And they also didn't they make Gears of War Judgment, Matt, the spin-off of Gears of War that wasn't handled by Epic?
That sounds right.
I think
I can't remember.
Maybe somebody in chat can clarify that. But I believe People Can Fly did do one of the Gears of War games. And the best way I can describe it is it's kind of like Gears of War crossed with Anthem, crossed with The Division. It is sort of a game as a service. There was a beta, a live beta, that ran all week on pretty much every platform except for Switch. I don't think the game's coming to Switch. But Xbox, PS4, PC, you could play it all weekend, and it was a big beta. It was like, they said it was like 7 hours long. I got actually more playtime out of it than that. I ended up playing it a ton. There are 4 different classes in it, and you could like go back and play for all 4 if you wanted to. It was a very robust beta, and I was pretty impressed with it, to be perfectly honest with you. Matt, did you get a chance to give this a go over the weekend?
No.
No?
No, I didn't actually know that happened.
Oh, you weren't aware? I'll say this. It was good to kind of disconnect a little bit over the last month. For some reason, Matt, when I don't feel well, I have very little interest in playing video games. I don't know why that is. Even if I have like a cold, I just don't like games all that much. I don't like having to concentrate on something. I prefer passive entertainment. So I was watching a lot of Netflix, a lot of Amazon Prime and stuff like that. But keeping up with it, with what was going on, just, kind of checking out Sifted every day. And also a big thanks to Vincent over the last month, who really pitched in and helped with curating content to Sifted over the last 30 days. Couldn't have done it without him. So thank you, Vincent, for everything you've done. So I did keep up on this, and so I did know that this beta was going up, and I downloaded it the day it came out to make sure I could really give it a good go. And the one thing I'll say about Outriders when compared to stuff like The Division or Anthem is that the single-player stuff feels a lot more robust and substantial. There's a legitimate plot in this game with twists and turns and lots of characters and character building. And the basic setup is humans have left Earth because Earth is uninhabitable, and they've ventured to this other planet. Well, one of the 2 ships from Earth ends up destroyed before they even get there, but you're on the one that actually makes it to the planet. And as the game starts, you are landing on the planet's surface. You have no idea what to expect when you get there. You land on the planet's surface, and pretty much all hell breaks loose immediately. Once you get there, you realize that the native wildlife is not friendly and is quite hostile. And there's also some other, I don't want to ruin anything either. There's another force, so to speak, on the planet. And you get there, and these crazy weather/electricity anomalies start happening on the planet's surface. And then there's a power struggle between you and sort of your group of friends and the person who's supposed to be the leader. And the leader is not a nice guy. It turns out that he's more concerned about sticking to the mission than making sure that everyone's all right. And that begins sort of the rub between the group that lands on the planet's surface. And from there, the game becomes sort of a traditional cover-based third-person shooter. And this is why I wonder if People Can Fly did the Gears game, because
they did. I just looked that up.
They did. Because the combat is very much like Gears. Here's one thing, though. There's no active reload. I really thought that there would be. At least I haven't.
We've talked about that before, that it's weird that no one steals that.
Yeah, I don't get it either, Matt. And it's not in this game either, at least not that I've found with the classes that I've played as. But there's a really good cover system. There's a really good system to link between cover as far as like rolling from one piece of cover to another. The auto-aim is not especially generous. You have to actually do a lot of the aiming yourself. That was a little shocking to me at first. It took me a little while to get my head around it, but once I got used to it, I felt like the aiming was good and the gunplay felt good. and the cover stuff feels good. But, Matt, where this game really shines is the weapons. The weapons in this game are crazy. Just the very first weapon I got with the class that I chose was this. It wasn't even really a shotgun. It fired kind of like 4 pellets, and then the 4th pellet would explode. And so it was almost like an M16. You fire it in bursts, and then the final round of that burst would explode. And once you got good and you started shooting with it, you'd learn the rhythm of it to where you were just like, pop, 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 and the enemy heads would just go, kapish. Very satisfying combat, very rewarding combat. The game is very pretty. I wouldn't say it's Gen 9 pretty. You can tell that this game was kind of built for the PS4 and Xbox One first. But it does run well on PS5. I've been playing on the PlayStation 5. And the footage that you're seeing is on PlayStation 5 at 1080p, obviously. Another thing I will say is I did get a new capture card for my birthday. So our B-roll should look amazing going forward. We also have the capability to capture in 4K, though obviously we can't stream in 4K. So what you're seeing here is just 1080p. But the game is pretty and polished and pretty well done, but it doesn't have that like next-gen sort of polish all over it that you might expect. But again, we're kind of in that first wave of next-gen stuff anywhere, where everything is kind of straddling the line between Gen 8 and Gen 9. And this game definitely does that, but it does look good. And it does run well as well. The frame rates seem to be pretty steady. As far as how the game is set up, it's linear. It's a lot like Gears in that way. You're kind of running down cattle chutes, and there are some like more open areas where you can kind of flank and get around the side of enemies and things like that. And the enemy AI is smart too. They will flank you. In fact, you'll see in some of the first combat footage in this how some of the enemies act. And it's all online as well. So you can play through the campaign cooperatively. I believe it's up to 4 players, but I never got more than one partner to play with me. But I think it's 4 total that can play through the campaign together. And there's a hub, and this is what really reminds me of Anthem. Like when you go back to the hub, like after you go through the initial parts of the game, you end up getting frozen again. So you're in cryo on the way to the planet. You wake up, all hell breaks loose. You go back into cryo, and you go to sleep for like 31 years or something like that. And then you wake up 31 years later, and some of the people didn't go to sleep at all. So some of the people who were like in the initial parts of the game are now old. They're like in their 60s and 70s. And they're like, oh my God, you're so lucky you were asleep. It's been a freaking nightmare. And what has happened is all the plans have just gone to crap. Everything that they were supposed to do when they got there, like all of the science and the experiments that they were supposed to do and the camps that they were supposed to set up and all the outposts that they were supposed to create and all the towers that they were supposed to build to send signals to each, all of it's just gone to crap. And basically everyone who didn't go back into cryo has just been scratching to stay alive. And they've all congregated in this kind of base behind these big steel kind of walls. And life just basically sucks. And you wake up and you're like, what's going on? And they're like, well, you haven't lived through this, man. We've been in the cut trying to survive through this insanity. And so that's where you come in. And you're like, you are I wouldn't say a secret soldier. You're like an elite soldier. And people thought that your kind was gone. And that the people like you were not going to be able to help them in their fight. So when you come out of cryo, some are pissed off because they're like, wait a minute, like where have you been for 31 years? But then they also start to realize, hey, this guy's a badass and he might actually be able to change our situation that we've been in for the last 30 years. And so that's kind of the setup. Not long after you come out of cryo, surprise, surprise, you discover there's someone else that's your kind as well. And that's kind of one of your first missions is to go and like rescue them. But that's kind of the setup for the game. The base is pretty big. And then there, like the Division, there's like these kind of gates that you go out that will send you out into the world to complete missions. But the missions it's not really like an open world game like the Division is, where you can just kind of wander around and get into trouble and stumble across missions and finish the missions. They're all kind of just fed to you, and then you go out and complete the mission and then head back to base. And then also, because you are the special soldier, you also have special powers. And each of the 4 classes have a different set of special powers. And there's 3. There's one that's tied to the left shoulder button. There's one that's tied to the right shoulder button. And then there's one that you can fire off by pressing both of the shoulder buttons together. Again, typical control scheme for games like this, as far as your specials are concerned. And then for the class that you're seeing, the class that I chose to play as first, he's like a pyromancer. So he can fire like a path of fire. He can, if you squeeze both of the shoulder buttons at the same time, he does this kind of like fire whip that pulls the enemies in towards you. And a lot of the game is managing that. The cooldowns are pretty chill. You can, like for instance, that fire trail that I could use with the class I started with, you can fire that off pretty frequently. Like, it's not one of those games where your specials are special and that you use it and then 5 minutes later you're like praying to God that like the cooldown is finished. It's the way the combat is designed. They want you to keep using it and they want you to learn how to use it to build combos. And that becomes a very important part of the game as you get farther into it. You start taking on bigger enemies. Like the first couple missions, like you can just use your gun and then fire off your special every once in a while and kill them. After a while, though, you have to start working together with your teammates to take out some of the bigger enemies, because some of the like the mini boss guys, like they almost have like a pattern where they build up to these crazy attacks that can literally just wipe you out like with one blow. And a lot of the game is managing the ebb and flow between those powerful attacks from the enemies, knowing when to unload yourself, knowing when to coordinate with your teammate or teammates if you have more than one, to unload on enemies when they're sort of weak and they're vulnerable. So there's a good bit of strategy to the combat. It's very visceral. The audio is really good. The only thing I would say that, and look, it's a beta, and so I don't want to be too harsh on it. It's basically just a preview build that they've let us play. The one thing I will say is it feels like the game was made in Europe. Like there's a little bit of like Eurojank to the game. Like some of the dialogue in the game is a little weird. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Some of the writing, it feels like it may have been written by someone who's ESL. Maybe English wasn't their first language. There's some awkward moments in the game where you're like, what? Like, why would you say that right now? Stuff like that.
Which is weird because you're going through Epic and they do know how that works. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, this is a Square Enix game. Square Enix is publishing.
Oh, it's Square?
Yeah.
All right,
but
that
still,
explains a few things.
Still, Square Enix has a great, U.S. branch that usually handles this stuff. No? You don't feel that way?
I mean, not when it comes to translating. I'm surprised that they didn't make the Outriders team like throw in more grunting.
Well, there is a lot of that. And that's also where kind of the Gears aesthetic kind of comes through. It is very much like a meathead game.
Yeah, well, no, I meant more like the Final Fantasy VII, so like, like kind of thing.
Well, that's Square Enix Japan that's going to do that.
Yeah, well, that's an anime thing, but like, it's it would be fun to see Outriders be forced to put that in the game to be on Square Enix brand.
Yep.
But my thing with it is it just looks utterly generic visually. Like there is not a single thing about it that makes my eyes interested in that game.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know. Like I look at it and I instantly want to look at something else. Like it doesn't look bad technically. Like it looks fine, like you said, but like art direction wise, I'm just like, oh, like that could be anything.
There's a lot of red and brown. I'll put it to you that way. And again, it's a beta, and so we didn't get to play a ton of the game.
Yeah,
but
it's a little surprising to me from People Can Fly, because like I don't like Bulletstorm very much, but I sure as hell know Bulletstorm when I see it.
Yep, it's very colorful and very unique. And you're right. Like even like you can create your own character, but there are like 8 hairstyles and like 10 faces. So the character creation is pretty simple, and no matter what I tried, my character always seemed to look like he was one of the cogs. Like it is very much. It is. I guess it's accurate to say the game is kind of generic. There's not a lot of creative spark in the game that I could see. It seems to borrow a lot of things from games that I like. And I'll say this, like generally it does pull the best parts of those games into this game. But it is very derivative. It is kind of a melting pot of the modern game as a service, with the benefit of being able to learn from the mistakes of the other games as a service. And you're seeing right now, like the skill tree, gigantic. So in a lot of ways, it is kind of like an action RPG. I didn't get far enough into the skill tree to see exactly sort of how robust it is and how far you can go through each one to make it actually feel different to play. But I'll say this, the classes do feel different to play. As far as like mastering kind of the ebb and flow of combat and figuring out what to do while not falling into like tropes. Because there's not like there is like one is a sniper and one is like the guy who's good at up close like melee stuff, and the melee stuff in this is actually pretty robust as well. But none of them just fall into like, if you're gonna play as this guy, you can only stand back and shoot. If you're gonna play as this guy, you have to be up in the enemy's face. Like all of them have a good bit of breadth to them as far as how functional they are against different enemy types and different terrain and different situations. Like I never felt like, as the pyromancer guy that I played as, that if I was in a long-range situation, I was helpless, or if I was up close with an enemy, I was helpless. Like, sure, I was more effective at mid-range, but I could get the job done at other ranges as well, and I think that's important. So you don't feel like you're getting kind of trapped into one classification as far as combat is concerned. Now, some people may like that, people who want to play cooperatively, because maybe they like that role. They like being the healer. They like being the ranged character who stands back and snipes and looks for headshots. And if you are that kind of player, this game may not appeal to you as much as it did to me. But as far as like the moment-to-moment play, it feels really good, Matt. And the cover system works really well. It is very generic. It is pretty derivative. I will definitely give you that. I don't see a lot of creative spark here. And maybe someday it ends up free to play. I don't know. I think it's probably too polished and too big for that, at least at first. And we're going to talk about a game here in a little bit in this episode that I didn't think would ever go to free to play either, but now I'm really starting to wonder. But yeah, like the lower third, I know you can't see it, but the lower third says Gears Division. So it is literally a game that just kind of combines a bunch of elements from all the recent games as a service or popular action games from the last 5-7 years or so, and kind of melts into one. But the beta was great. I haven't not played a beta for a long time that was this robust. I mean, it lets you play as all 4 classes for as long as you want, basically. So I went through like the whole thing with the first class I chose, which was like the Pyromancer class. And then I went back and would play through like a mission or two with each one to get a feel for how each one played. And like I said, they feel different, but not helpless in every situation, which I appreciated, and some people may not. So Outriders is coming to everything but Switch, and it's coming pretty soon. It launches, like, I believe later this month, actually. And I will say this, like, I've played a lot of betas, and this one was really polished. It feels like the game, at least based upon what I got to play, it feels like the game is ready for release. It was bug-free. I didn't have any problems, like, joining servers or having people join my game once I found people to play with. I was actually surprised that a lot of people were like you, Matt, that maybe they didn't know this was going on, or they just didn't care, because it was hard for me to get a game with a friend.
I think there's a lot that didn't care. I mean, look, when I saw the trailer and the reveal and stuff, I assumed it was a free-to-play multiplayer game.
Yeah.
Like, they're up against a huge image problem with this game, I think. Also, the title sucks.
It does.
Yeah,
sure.
I think there's no...
I mean,
like the cover thing with like the 3 people walking towards out of the like, it just looks like it looks like someone tried to do their own Agents of Mayhem game. Like it feels like a Xerox of a Xerox. What I like, not like the footage doesn't look like that from like the demo necessarily, but like nothing about the game on a surface level entices me to try it.
I would agree with that. Just looking at it, you're right. There's nothing that sticks out. There's nothing that makes it look unique or really play unique. I was talking earlier about the weapons are kind of the focus, and the fact
and
that
it sounds like there's like kind of a little bit of a like the pedigree of the Bulletstorm combo system is sort of in there. Like you but it sounds like basically unless you know who People Can Fly is, you're probably not going to even look at this twice.
That's probably a pretty safe bet, actually. Or unless you watch GameFace, so you listen to people like us who have been enjoying it. And I will say this, I enjoyed playing it. Like, I had a really good time with the game. So I don't want people to go away from this discussion thinking it's terrible or something they shouldn't try out. And I think maybe the beta is still up, actually. I noticed yesterday that it updated on my PS5. I saw it was downloaded.
Well, yeah, because it's not a beta, it's a demo. So presumably it will stay there at least until launch.
You think?
It's a demo. They want you to try it and then buy it.
And they want you to get hooked. The other thing about it, too, is that your progress in this carries over to the final game. So whatever you make it through, anything you unlock, anything as far as your skill trees and stuff like that, all that's going to be there. But I'll say this.
Clearly it's a first one's free situation. I imagine this will stay up pretty much permanently.
And I'll say this too, Matt, like, I have a friend who's a gamer back in Philadelphia who I've been playing games with for literally like decades. And he reached out to me and he's like, he likes games as a service. Like he's like a sucker for them. He's already played like Destiny 2 to where he can't play it anymore. Like he's played every piece of content that they put out. And he was like, what should I try next? And he asked me that like a month ago. And I told him, I'm like, have you played The Division 2? And he was like, nope. And I was like, then that's probably what you should play. So he installed it. And then he called me and he's like, hey, will you install it and play with me and kind of show me the ropes? And I was like, sure. So I reinstalled it again. By the way, it's like the file size is huge. It's like 150 gigs. So I installed it, played with him for like a day, and then uninstalled it. But I think people like that who are Destiny fans or whatever and like games like this and are like, what am I supposed to play? Like, I would probably recommend that he now would move to Outriders instead of continuing to play The Division 2, despite the fact that Ubisoft is doing a great job of supporting The Division 2 still. So, and going back to the Division 2 was an interesting trip as well, I would say. I thought I was going to be able to go in and, like, carry him, but the way that they balance the enemies in that game, like, they do a good job. They've really figured it out. Like, it was challenging for both of us, and he was a noob. He was, like, level 3 or whatever. I was level, I don't even remember, like 50 or something. And it was still engaging and fun for both of us to play. So Ubisoft's done a pretty good job with The Division 2 if you haven't checked it out in a long time. I had fun. But I'll say this, I had more fun playing this because this still, to me, feels like more refined, more advanced. It feels like the combat I enjoyed a lot more because, again, it's like this rhythmic thing where you learn the timing of using your weapons and then firing your special off. So there's something about it. There's something to it. I really enjoyed it, and I played it all weekend long. I don't know if I'll stick with it because obviously there's other stuff that you and I have to keep chugging along for the show and stuff like that. But I think it's definitely worth checking out. The demo's out there. It's free for everyone. It's big. You'll have a pretty good idea on whether you want to spend the money on the final game after you've given the demo a go. And let's move on. We're going to talk next about the game that I mentioned in the open that I said that Matt and I had played back like before. And here's the thing. So we had a rundown already for this episode like a month ago. And it was interesting going back and looking at that because I did the run. I was going to try to do GameFace the following Tuesday after all this happened. I tried so hard. I captured footage of this werewolf game. I had set up the whole rundown. I had a B-roll for everything, and I just couldn't do it because I literally thought I was going to die. But this game I did play, and the reason I want to talk about it still is because there's really no other game like it. And I can't remember the last time I played as a werewolf in a video game, Matt. Can you?
I can remember killing them. I can't remember being one beyond like Elder Scrolls. Like you could be a werewolf in Skyrim, I think.
Yeah, but why are there no werewolf games? It looks like Resident Evil Village is going to have werewolves in it. But I doubt you're going to play as one. Who knows? Maybe it's possible.
No, I wouldn't think so.
It would be cool if you could, but I doubt it.
Like I guess, does Altered Beast count?
Yeah, it does actually.
I guess it's not a lot out there.
Why is that? I mean, it seems to me like it's a no-brainer for gamers. Like,
I don't know. Like I guess Wolf Among Us. It's not really an action game, but like you can do that.
Vincent brings up, does Twilight Princess count? Kinda.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, you turn into a wolf.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just. I think one of the Castlevania games, the second the N64 game is sort of a remake of the original N64 game.
Yeah.
You could play as a werewolf in that.
Yep.
That game was terrible though. Yeah, it's not common.
Why is that? Like, it seems like a missed opportunity to me. Because look,
I mean,
Matt,
I think
forced
for a long
myself
time
to play this game because of it.
I think for a long time because it was hard to do fur. Also because the instant you commit to making a character that can transform into other things, you have to do 2 characters.
Yep. And in this game actually has 3.
Yeah, you have 3 forms in this, which is shrinking it down for the original game. the actual tabletop RPG where you have 5.
Yeah, we should have mentioned that actually. So this game is based upon the World of Darkness tabletop RPGs. They're very popular, and I honestly had never heard of them because I don't play tabletop games that much or at all. Really.
You have heard of them though, because you know what Vampire the Masquerade is.
Yeah, it's in the same universe as Vampire the Masquerade, which was just...
It was actually first.
Right.
So I was into these back in the day, and I mean, they're still around, but back in the early 90s, Werewolf was actually the first one, and Vampire came second. Vampire blew up. Werewolf
Which is why the game came first.
Yeah, Werewolf was sort of the also ran. Well, it's also because why Vampire has gotten multiple games and Werewolf has not. Werewolf, I think, has had 2. This is the second Werewolf the Apocalypse game. Also there was a Werewolf game on NES. Big yellow cover. It was very, very hard, and your arms became like scythes. Werewolf the Last Warrior or something like that. Anyway, that's the only other werewolf I can think of where you play as a werewolf. And I don't even think you could play as anything other than the wolf form in that. Anyway, Werewolf the Apocalypse. It's also interesting to play a Werewolf the Apocalypse game later in this month, now that Bloodlines 2 is probably dead.
Do you think it's dead? Because it was just delayed.
They shut the developer down. Like it's gone. Like if that game does come out, it's going to be remade from the ground up. Like there's no way. Like I don't think we will ever see Vampire Bloodlines 2.
Wow. That's crazy, man.
If we do, it will be a Prey 2 situation.
Where it'll it's like revived by some other developer like 8 years later or something.
Yeah, it'll be a completely different game. Not that we'd ever know necessarily, because more was shown of Prey 2 than what ended up. What got shown of Bloodlines 2. But it won't be the same thing. It'll probably end up being something like this game, a like weirdly janky, mediocre action RPG that thinks it has a story but is actually really boring. But it is interesting to see like the Werewolf the Apocalypse mythos sort of like translated into games and sort of done straight. Like they don't shy away from the weird shit in this one. They talk about all the weird, the worm and the wild and the weaver, the 3 forces that are all in struggle in the werewolf world.
Yeah, because the basic setup of this is that there is an evil corporation that's basically desecrating the world, and the Wolverine the Wolf clan is trying to stop them from destroying.
In Werewolf, there's an overarching megacorp called Pentex, which is run by what's called there's the Wild, which is what the werewolves are. It's like a form of life-giving chaos. There's the Weaver, which is order. So Wild is chaos, Weaver is order. The Weaver is personified by giant spiritual spiders. And whenever humans build things, that's the Weaver, like when you order things. And then the Worm is balance. The Worm is supposed to balance order and chaos, but at some point the Weaver went mad and started that, which is what represents like the explosion of civilization and industrialization. And the Worm was poisoned. And so the Worm is just a force of pure destruction and madness now. And so the werewolves see it as their job. They're soldiers of Gaia who are basically defending the planet against these forces of destruction that are trying to overtake and destroy the balance of nature. And Pentex is kind of a stand-in for every mega corporation. Pentex is not necessarily like our corporate. Pentex is controlled by the Worm, and it's trying to destroy the environment. Like their whole goal is to do that. And you're up in this, most of the time in this game, you're up against Endron, which is a subsidiary of Pentex, which is a very slightly veiled Enron. There's I read a bunch of the old source books again, just after I played this to remind myself of all the kind of the stuff. And it cracked me up. I tweeted this, but cracked me up. Like one of the source books from 2000, lists all the different Pentex like subsidiaries. And one of them is a biotech corporation called Magadon.
Wow.
Is life too fucking weird or what?
That is weird.
And so like that's kind of the setup and the premise. And the fun thing about this game is that like all the corporations are conveniently walking distance from your nest, your werewolf lair. It's very, very, very fun. And you play. I can't remember the name of the guy. He has some weird name.
I don't remember it either.
But you play as a werewolf guy who, like in the prologue, he he has to go rescue his wife from her infiltration mission at the corporation place, and gets confronted by what's called a black spiral dancer, which is an evil werewolf. Those are the evil werewolves. There's all these different tribes of werewolves, but there's one tribe that delved too deep in the evil worm world and became the black spiral dancers. And they're like the bad guy werewolves. And the werewolf, he killed the black spiral dancer kills his wife in front of him, and he turns into his werewolf form, his Krynos form, which is the tradition, because you can turn into a normal wolf or you can turn into like a half man, half wolf. That's like the big super powered, awesome form. Yeah. And
you can just basically turn into a dog, or you can turn into a werewolf. Yeah.
And he turns into a friend. He goes frenzy and he kills the enemy, but he also kills one of his pack mates and has to go off and like be in exile because he went crazy. And then eventually he comes back and finds his daughter is there and grown up and is trying
a lot of his pack dies is what happens.
Yeah, like the fight against the companies has not been going well, and he stays to help them out. And that's kind of the basic premise of what's happening.
And so you can basically turn into any of those forms whenever you want. If you turn into the werewolf, and you can't see it, but we're running B-roll of that right now. It's a very gory button masher. Is the best way.
You gotta like have rage to turn into the half and half form, but like it ends the fight pretty quick. Yeah, like that's the thing I don't get it, because this game really tries to make you stealth and sneak around as the wolf and the human.
Game, honestly,
but like, there's no real downside to just turning into the werewolf and killing everybody.
There's not. It's also pretty absurd.
It's like, do I want to spend 10 minutes sneaking through this area, or do I want to spend 10 seconds cutting people apart and just get on with it?
Yeah.
That was the struggle I ran into.
The werewolf stuff is very simple. There's basically light attack and strong attack. So there's not a lot of nuance to, and again, that's why I called it a button masher. You pretty much just mash buttons and kill.
There's like that incredibly rudimentary skill tree, which is almost just like cute.
Yeah,
it's like,
it's so small.
Look who thinks he's an action RPG. That's adorable, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I will say I really like the transition animations. Yeah. Like when you transform, it looks really cool. It's like really instant, but it's super smooth. Like it really feels nice to change forms.
And then as far as the dog form is concerned, like you really only use it to like go through like these air ducts to get you from one room to the next. It really just kind of ties into the stealth gameplay more than anything. And
it was also like not as noticeable. Like people don't freak out when they see a wolf running around so much in the woods, and it's faster than the other forms.
Except most of the time you're not in the woods in this game. You're in some like nondescript like factory / warehouse / compound.
Yeah. With a lot of convenient barriers set up to sneak behind.
Steel walls and like.
But I mean, the wolf is just sort of smaller and easier to navigate around. And then like if you there's like a skill you can get that makes the wolf form even harder to notice.
Yeah.
So basically, it's like you basically get like almost a full 30 seconds before anybody really notices you're there in plain sight. So the wolf form is sort of your stealth thing, and if you got to turn into a human to choke a guy out, fine, but like or hop over something. It's not a difficult game.
It's not.
Like, no matter how you want to play it.
So easy. They try to make you stealth. Like the game prods you to play it like a stealth game.
Yeah. Like narratively, it wants you to, narratively you should be quiet. Like you don't want them to know you're there. But if you do just go loud and kill everybody, the doors are real soundproof.
Oh, it's absurd, Matt. It's like you're in a room and you massacre. Because the other thing is, this is one of those games where enemies just keep flooding in. And like there are actually, like, if you go in stealthy, you can kind of sabotage the portals that bring in enemies so you don't have to fight as many of them if you don't want to. But they'll keep spawning and coming in. And you can murder like 40 guys in a room, go into the next room, and it's like nothing ever happened. And you can hear them screaming, and they're firing their shotguns, and like you go to the next room.
You can't see in the other room from the new room anymore because the first room's just got blood covering the window. It's like
the game's really gory. Yeah, it goes over the top with the gore. But you're right. Like it tries to tell you to play the game stealth. There's really no reason to do it that way at all.
Yeah, and like you could have done like some kind of Dishonored thing where like the more stealth you blow, like the harder the game gets, or like your packmates don't trust you as much anymore, or like there could have been some kind of narrative or character based penalty for playing violently too much.
Yep.
or like, you know, there is even something like that in the actual RPG where you have like rage that builds up and it makes it harder to control your character. But that's not here at all. Like there's no penalty for just hacking and slashing your way through everything.
It is not a subtle or nuanced
and some people may
game.
not consider that a negative, but like it just gets tedious. Like at a certain point, like if you hit a point where you're like, I'm having trouble with this stealth section, it's like, why don't I just kill everybody?
Yeah.
Like there's no incentive to play the game the way the game wants you to play it.
Yeah, it's not very subtle or nuanced. I mean, that's pretty much
also like if you're playing a werewolf game, don't you want to be a werewolf and hack people up? Like you're like the point of the game
stuff is so weird.
It's almost like Death Stranding. It's like the point of the game wants you to play it boring. Like if an exciting thing that can only happen in that game happens, it's because you screwed up. That's how the werewolf thing is. It's like, oh yeah, I got to play as a werewolf, but I wasn't supposed to. Like it's
and it's also strange. Absurd. Like, you know, the enemy AI is just idiotic, and they'll stand there. Like you can walk right in their field of view, and they don't see you. And like once you get the crossbow, even the stealth has no challenge anymore because the crossbow, it's like one hit kills, and you can just walk around and just shoot people in the back of the head with a crossbow and clear them all out. It really, the lack of challenge is what made me stop playing the game after a while because the combat isn't...
What, you weren't engrossed in the scintillating tale being told?
No. Like, well, first of all, like I don't know as much about the source material as you do. So a lot of this...
It doesn't help.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff that they were saying and talking about, like I had no clue. I'm like, whoa, that's like way over my head. And there are supposedly...
Why is he talking to this giant tree?
Right.
Ghost
like I didn't know what was
thing.
going on half the time. There are like when you have dialogue with NPCs, it appears that there's like branching dialogue, but I couldn't tell that it had any effect on anything later on in the game.
No, as far as I could tell, it didn't change anything.
Yeah, it seemed like it's just like there for shits and giggles for the most part.
Like you can like make people respond to you. It's like, you know, like you can either say things that are supportive or like kind of assholey to your daughter when you first meet her again for the first time in like 5 years, but like the same things happen anyway, you know, regardless of what, you know, her response to you is either like irritated or angry, but like you still, the next level is still the same. It's still the next level. Like there's no difference.
Yep. And so the game is $50. That's way too much for this game. It is available for pretty much everything, but I would recommend this game at like $25, $30 max.
Yeah. Also, this thing has like and ends up on Game Pass and or PlayStation Plus all over it.
Guaranteed. Like, yep. You're going to be able to get this game free very soon is my guess. I wouldn't be surprised if it's before like, you know, September or whatever. It's like a free game. Because here's the thing. It does have some promise, Matt. It's not terrible.
Yeah, it's not like this is a bad idea. It's not like what they're trying to make is like, oh my God, why'd you even bother?
Yeah.
It's like, no, there's a good game in here somewhere.
Yep. If they had like another 2 years or something like that to work on it, like it might actually have been something. But you're right. Like the RPG stuff is just like tacked on and irrelevant. The combat isn't deep enough and nuanced enough to carry the game. That's why I got sick of it. After a few hours of the combat, it wasn't expanding enough, and I just got tired of doing the same stuff over and over.
It's very constrictive, and also like this kind of like the werewolf property sort of demands a bigger world. Like it demands like a forest to run around in, sort of like Assassin's Creed Valhalla or something. Like some themes of that tabletop game are centered on the wild, and sort of like it would make a lot more sense if this game played more like Ghost of Tsushima in terms of layout.
Agreed.
Than like linear stealth levels. It's a very strange direction to take it.
Yep. So there's something here. I don't know if they'll get to make another game because my guess is it's going to fail miserably. It did not review terribly. It seemed like most critics kind of were like us. There's like something here, but they just didn't nail it with this first entry. I don't know if they'll get another shot at it.
I don't know. Also, like this is like what they do. Like this is the same team that made Styx. You know, those Styx games.
Those knockoff stealth games. Yeah.
Yeah, the stealth like goblin games.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's, you know, we talked about Eurojank earlier, and
this definitely has its share for sure. But I do think there's something there. I think it has an opportunity if they could give them another shot at the game. But maybe you're right. You know, they've already made a couple Styx games and they weren't great. So maybe there really isn't any opportunity here with this. And maybe they will let him make another one, though, too, because they let him make 2 Styx games. So
true. I mean, Styx was also, the first Styx also gained traction because it was a PlayStation Plus giveaway. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't know why you pick that developer to do your werewolf game. It's not like they did a tremendously bad job, but it is focused on their strength, which is stealth.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
I don't know why that is.
You knew it was going to be a stealth game when you gave that studio the IP. And that was a poor decision. I
don't know why that was what you thought. Like, that totally makes sense for werewolves. I don't know. It's like how the vampire bloodlines, like, even the Bloodlines 2 is probably gone. Like, the appeal of the Bloodlines game was that, like, it understood that the vampire thing was about character work and interaction. The Bloodlines is interesting because it's almost all dialogue driven. It's like there's fighting in it, but it's like you're playing a character, you're interacting with all these other characters. Dialogue is very meaningful. Can change how the whole game functions, unlike this one. And like who you pick and the character you make is central to, if you pick a Ventru in Bloodlines, you are going to be playing in the halls of power. If you pick a Nosferatu, you are going to be stuck in the sewers. Like, it changed how the game played. And in this one, not only do you not get to pick from the various kinds of werewolf tribes, which are all different and very interesting, it would have made a more interesting way to kind of interact with the world by, seeing it through the lens of these different tribes. You're stuck with this one dude who's already created and is kind of generic anyway. And beyond that, like, he belongs to I can't remember the name because I can never pronounce it, but like it's a tribe that's based in like Ireland and England, and they're sort of the singers and tale tellers of the werewolf community. But he's just sort of a guy who hits things, and it's like he doesn't come off as someone from that tribe. And not everyone has to be the same in all the different clans and stuff, but like. It was weird to find out he was that. I mean, that's a deep lore thing, but it's weird to find out that was his tribe. Because I'm like, I would not have guessed that one. Okay, that's an interesting take on that. I mean, I've been out of the game for a long time. They've revised it a lot in the last 10, 15 years, but like, I don't think it's gotten that weird.
And this isn't the only game set in this universe. There was like a digital novel, basically, that was released before this.
Yeah, they've done a couple of those.
And there's another one coming, too, another game set in World of Darkness. So
yeah, Werewolf, the Werewolf Heart of the Forest came out like last week.
Yep, that's the digital
like a visual novel.
Yeah, the PC one actually came out way before that, though. It came out on consoles last week.
They've done a couple of vampire ones like that, too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Same format. It's funny. Like, I think the most other than Bloodlines, the most successful games they've made out of World of Darkness stuff is probably the Hunter the Reckoning games. You remember those?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like those like kind of hack and slash Diablo-ish games. That was also part of World of Darkness. Like there's no reason World of Darkness video games couldn't be good. They just aren't.
You don't have the budget, so you don't have the developer. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. So I think they're going to stick with it, though. I think we're going to get more games, and hopefully they'll give maybe this to another studio where it makes more sense, because stealth to me just doesn't fit. And again, I don't know a lot about.
If you got this werewolf thing in your back pocket, you want to make like a God of War.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, and it has the opportunity to be something like that if they actually put it in the hands of the right developer. So we'll see. But anyway, there you go. That's Werewolf Earthblood. And I'm just going to call it Werewolf Earthblood because the titles are really long. And what you really need to remember is werewolf and the subtitle.
Werewolf, the apocalypse, -Earthblood.
Right, it's exactly what it, ampersand. Yeah, they're insane. So anyway, there you go. That's Werewolf.
The Reckoning.
All right, next we're going to talk about Sony's State of Play that just happened. I think maybe a lot of people had high expectations for this. I think they might have been... For some reason, which was misguided, because Sony was very upfront about what it was. It said right before it even happened that it was not going to have first-party games in it. There's going to be third-party stuff, and it was going to be stuff that's coming soon, which means stuff that we already knew about. I mean, if anybody expected them to just show a game at this and then have it released in the next 2 months, like, the chances of that happening are nil to zero. So anyone who's bummed out over this, I feel like you either weren't paying attention, you weren't using Sifted, or your expectations were just completely out of whack. Now, with that said, I will say this. It did feel like a retread of the initial sort of PS5 software blowout. which makes sense because, that initial blowout was like, hey, here's the stuff that's coming soon. And then this was, hey, here's the stuff that's coming real soon.
Still soon.
But not here
we
yet.
mean it this time.
Yeah. There was, I think...
Launch window.
There was, I think, for some people, like, one big thing, though, that was in this, and that is Final Fantasy VII Intergrade, which is
It's not a Square game if you didn't make a word up.
Yeah, exactly. Which is kind of a two-pronged approach update to Final Fantasy VII. It is, on one hand, it is the PlayStation 5 upgrade for the Final Fantasy VII remake. And you'll see eventually in this B-roll here, they even put out like a comparison video that Square Enix made.
So somebody over there has been watching Digital Foundry videos.
Absolutely. They put out their own comparison video. But also, it is kind of an expansion. The first sort of extra content to the remake that features Uffy. I'm thinking of the pop star Uffy. Yuffie, yeah. And still no word on the PC version of this, Matt. Are you surprised that we still haven't got an update on that stuff?
Not completely. Square has a kind of a sketchy PC history. And I imagine they know their core audience is on console. So
PlayStation's getting a lot of run out of this exclusivity window.
Yeah, it's also another excuse to put it out again.
Do you think Sony paid more money for this expansion?
No, because I think it's on everything, isn't it?
It's what?
I think it's on everything, isn't it? Isn't this is like the multi-platform release, basically?
Oh, it is?
That's what I thought. That was my understanding when I watched it.
Oh, I didn't think so at all.
It's all coming on June 10th for everything.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But the gimmick is that PS4 owners get a free upgrade.
Oh, okay.
If you want it on another system, you have to buy it separately.
So wait, you're saying it's coming
good.
to Xbox Series on June 10th?
That's what I thought.
I don't think so.
Is it just an expansion?
I think it is, and I think it's just for PlayStation right now. Maybe someone in chat can clarify, but that's what I thought it was. Yeah, it's not on anything else yet. Yeah, it's only going to be on. It's still going to be a PlayStation exclusive. The Xbox version hasn't even been confirmed yet. In fact, so
well, that. I guess that is surprising. I don't know. From what I had understood, the exclusivity deal ended in April.
That's what I'm saying. Like Sony's getting a lot of run out of this deal that it made with Square Enix for this.
Yeah, I don't know.
Which, if you're a PlayStation owner, that's great. This game looked pretty good even before the PS5 upgrades. And well, I thought it did. And then the weird part, though, is like when they show the comparison stuff, and this B-roll, we'll get to it eventually. When they show it, like, I don't even know that the PS5 footage looks better, to be honest with you. Like,
it's just got more lighting, really.
Yeah, but they'll do this side by side, and like in some scenes, I feel like the PS4 version looks better. Like, I don't know why.
I mean, some of it's a little easier to. Here's the other thing: is like I appreciate what they're doing with the side by side thing, but it's a 1080p stream. Like it's not the proper venue to do a look how much better the resolution is, because you have no idea what resolution people are seeing this in.
Yeah,
like on stream,
that's
like you're
true,
losing a lot of the detail. So to me, watching it on my 4K TV on the stream, I was just like, well, I can tell that the lighting is more detailed, and like there's like light sources are giving stuff out when he walks by the lamp and stuff. But like, I wasn't seeing the big jump in resolution and texture detail really, because Twitch is not the place for that. Like,
I thought the PS4 version looked like there was more contrast. Like the darks looked darker and the lights looked lighter. Overall, the PS5 stuff just looked like it was almost like had a higher tint level or something to it. I don't know. But either way, technically...
They're definitely leaning hard into the colored lighting on the PS5 version. That's part of it.
That could be it, yeah. Which would then make the scenes maybe look lighter. So that does make sense. But again, I thought the PS4 version looked pretty good for a PS4 game in the first place. So
somewhat. I mean, that's pretty fun. If I remember right, when that game came out, like, youth didn't think it looked very good. And like Mitch and I were like, I think it looks pretty good, except that one door. It's like that one door.
Oh,
that's
no,
what I really want to see.
No, out in the open world, the textures were terrible.
Yeah. That's what I really want to see. And they didn't show that comparison.
They didn't.
I want to see Cloud's door. Like Cloud's door had like that PS2 texture on it, and I want to see if they fixed the door.
There are a lot of the outdoor textures were pretty freaking terrible, to be honest.
That one I remember though because it's the only one of those that the game forces you to stare at. It's like other things are just kind of round. Like, okay, that little piece of wood is bad or whatever. But like this one is like, we are going to focus the camera on this terrible fucking door, and you're gonna have to stare at it while Tifa knocks on it. And it's like, no one was like, hey, we should probably fix the door that takes up 70% of this camera shot. Like, okay. I will give them credit for, it's been well established that I kind of hate this game. But credit to Square for giving it to PS4 owners free. Yeah. The upgrade for free.
Not every publisher is doing that.
I mean, the Yuffie stuff is extra, I think, but the actual PS5 version is free if you already own the PS4 version. Meanwhile, Nintendo wants $60 more out of me for the HD remaster of the worst Zelda. So, like, there's a contrast there that I do appreciate, even though
Nintendo
I don't like the game.
Nintendo conveniently has no way to sort of do its upgrades because it's been.
They could charge $30.
That's true.
Come on, God. I know I should know better by now, but when I saw that Skyward Sword HD was $60, my jaw dropped. Yeah. Like, are you kidding me?
And unfortunately, that is one thing that will not be in this show. That was 2 weeks ago, so we're not going to talk about that Nintendo Direct.
Yeah, there wasn't much.
It was too long ago. There was like that, and there was Splatoon 3.
It was just like, Golf. you're gonna screw us on the Zelda anniversary. No one's even gonna mention Metroid's 35 this year too. And Breath of the Wild 2 news in November if you're lucky, and bite me. That was basically that direct.
We did get some Pokemon stuff though, and we are going to talk about that in this show. So we'll get to that eventually. And then next up from the State of Play, Kena. Actually, we now know you pronounce it Kena.
Kena, yeah.
Bridge of Spirits. I learned through the grapevine this week that this game initially was built by 6 people. Mm-hmm. Which...
It's still a very small team.
It is a small team, but literally the bulk of the game was built by 6 people, which I don't know how to take that. I mean, first of all, 6 people building what we've seen so far is mind-blowing. That is amazing. But it also has made me temper my expectations for the game. It's either going to be really short or there are going to be parts of the game that are really rudimentary and simple, is my guess. But what they've shown so far, wow. I can't believe
the current team is 14.
So
they staffed up to 14.
They've bloated to 14 at this point.
Yes.
That's amazing. It's a testament to like middleware and the tools and stuff that you can
they have been outsourcing to other studios. Like they've been working with Sparks and stuff and obviously with Sony, but it's a small team project for sure.
But the combat's it's shaping up to be, it looks really freaking cool. Like, I like everything about it.
The only thing I don't like is the release date.
Yeah.
That's August is a lot later than I thought this would be coming out, but whatever. Like, finish it.
14-man team. It's like, if they get it out this year, I'll be surprised. Maybe it is just like a 3 or 4 hour game, and it's a sort of simple, like, it's more about telling a great story than it is about combat and sort of building up, like, the character and things like that. I don't think
it is. They've got, like, the village is described as their hub world, and, like, I think it's decent. It's going to be decent sized. It might be, I don't think it's going to be Valhalla or anything, but I think it'll be decent.
But it's crazy just watching this new trailer that they put out, like, to think the amount of people that are working on it. It's mind-blowing. Like... I don't even know what engine they're using. Are they using Unreal or?
It's Unreal, I think. If I remember right, it's
impressive. It just shows you like.
Yeah, I think it's Unreal 4, if I remember right.
It just shows you what you can do now with middleware. It used to be when you had Unreal.
Also with talent.
Yeah, and talent.
Like they're good at what they do.
But it's still like back in the old days, even using Unreal in the hands of someone who was skilled, like you still got crap games or. You got games that all look like Gears of War.
Well, that's the advantage of Unreal is you're building on everything that came before.
Yeah.
Like every time someone every time the Gears team implements some new thing, like there's a new way, like Epic's like, oh, we can do that in the engine now. And now that becomes available. It's like, it's one of the things that Jade Raymond kind of complained about, or was it Jade? No, I think maybe it was Amy Hennig, but one of them complained about it after they got, laid off from EA and the Star Wars stuff was like, it was Amy Hennig. It was, they talked about how like they were making that kind of third person action Star Wars game, which I am still convinced was solo based, and how like there was nothing in the Frostbite 2 engine for animating a character like vaulting over a piece of cover.
I don't
and so
know. Why
they had to build it.
That engine, it makes
so
no
they
sense.
had to build it, and like she's like, one of the things that bothered her was like, we spent all that time building that into the Frostbite 2 engine, and now other teams at EA can use that tech, but we'll never get to show you what we built it for, kind of thing. And like that's true, but like that's an advantage when it comes to something more open source like Epic's stuff. But it can be a problem.
Would rather build broken games than pay a little bit of a sliver of their profits to another company to use an engine.
Well, so isn't it interesting that like, like we saw this week that Dragon Age 4 is single player because of Fallen Order's success in part, and Apex Legends set a new record for simultaneous players last week on Steam, and it's like the biggest successes at EA right now are Respawn games that EA's executive wing didn't want to make.
I know. Yep. And they're raking in the cash.
And I mean, we'll get to that after this when we do go to Anthem.
Yep.
But it's just fascinating to me how tone deaf that company's leadership is right now. Amazing. And how Respawn is kind of saving their ass right now.
Yeah. And yet they still keep making money hand over fist. It's mind boggling.
Yep. But this looks really good. Obviously, I wish it was coming sooner, but I'm not going to begrudge a team that small for needing to take their time. It just looks really good, and I want to play it right now.
Yep.
That's all.
And then next up is Hyper Light Drifter. Well, not Hyper Light Drifter, the spiritual successor to Hyper Light Drifter, Solar Ash. They showed basically how the game plays finally. There had been gameplay in trailers before, but this was kind of a guided tour in how it actually plays from the studio itself. And I will say this. After watching this, I was very happy that I drafted this game onto my fantasy team towards the end. There's actually another game that we're going to talk about in a minute, Deathloop, that I'm also, now that I've seen more of it, I'm a little more encouraged that it's on my fantasy team. But this game, Solar Ash, I think it embodies a lot of what was great about Hyper Light Drifter, but I also think it's going to appeal to a wider audience because I am more interested in this. I liked Hyper Light Drifter, but I am more interested in this game than I was in Hyper Light Drifter. Just the speed, the fact that you're always moving. I know some people may not like that and may say, oh, that's too much of a departure, but that's why it's not called Hyper Light Drifter 2. So it looks unique. It gives me a little bit of like a Jet Set Radio vibe at times, which I'm all about.
Yeah, I can see that.
But it also has like the excellent combat that we got in Hyper Light Drifter, and that's just never going to go away. I like that they're mixing it up with a lot of traversal stuff and lightning fast and like the grapple hook stuff. I just think it looks awesome. I love the art style, which is definitely in the same class as we got with Hyper Light Drifter. You can tell that they're brothers and sisters, so to speak. I think this game is looking hot. I think it's certainly in line to be, or at least be considered for Indie Game of the Year. Based upon
it's also going to be a lightning rod of controversy when it comes out because it's written by Zoe Quinn.
Oh,
so expect the shitheads to be out in force on this one.
But those same shitheads loved Hyper Light Drifter.
Yeah, well, cognitive dissonance is not a problem for them. We are aware of this. But expect the usual dipshit suspects to come for this one because of the connection to Zoe Quinn.
I didn't even know that she had worked on this game at all. Sometimes it's better to just not know anything and just play the games. It's like I say all the time, like I don't worry about the context of stuff. I just play the frickin' game. What is the game? Let me play it. And sometimes it's much easier to enjoy games that way, I think anyway. But this thing's looking hot, man. Like, I am really excited for it. I don't get pumped up for a lot of indie games, but this one's definitely got me excited. Just this trailer, like, it's also coming out this year. They don't have a hard release date for it yet, but they said definitely before the end of 2021, so I'm feeling pretty confident that I'm not going to have to fill a hole in my fantasy team for drafting this game. Yeah, it looks awesome. It's kind of right in my wheelhouse, to be perfectly honest with you, Matt. It's like surreal with great combat. And traversal, really good traversal. I'm really excited for it. And I think most people will get over the fact that somebody they may or may not know wrote it when they start playing it. At least I hope so. how lame would it be for people to deprive themselves of playing a great game because of some person that worked on it, which, is kind of what might happen on the other side with Hogwarts Legacy, to be honest with you. What happens if Hogwarts Legacy ends up being like a Game of the Year candidate? A lot of the people who have moral issues with the people working on it, it'll be interesting to see how they handle that.
Yeah, here's my guess on that one. It won't be.
I know.
Because we've played the other games that studio has made.
Yeah. It's possible, though, that it could be really good.
It'll probably be fine.
Yeah.
It'll probably be, but it ain't going to be like, it's not going to be like a revelation like Arkham Asylum was or anything. It's just going to be like, that's okay.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it's kind of turtles all the way down on that one. I don't know. Harry Potter's like a cursed franchise at this point when it comes to dipshits working on it. I don't know what happened there.
There just really hasn't been a great Harry Potter game ever. Let's be honest. For a long time, they tried to focus on Quidditch, and like that never worked. And then they tried to do action-adventure, action RPGs. It's just... I
think the first couple couple movie games on Game Boy Advance were actually really good, like top-down action RPGs.
Yeah.
But yeah, like there's never been a truly great Harry Potter game, which is weird because it's just like it's right. I mean, this Hogwarts Legacy thing is right there. Like they're basically making the game. Everyone said, "Why don't you make this?"
Yeah.
Since they started making Harry Potter games. Yeah. The problem is double. Obviously, they got the controversy over Rowling. You got the controversy over the guy, one of the directors on it. But like also, like no disrespect intended to that company Avalanche, but like really, like the people who made Disney Infinity are the ones you went to to make the big like hotly anticipated Hogwarts.
But they
RPG.
Also made Just Cause.
I think those are two different.
Oh, that's the other Avalanche.
There's two different Avalanches.
Oh, I thought they were the same one in this case, but maybe not.
No, Avalanche. There's two different ones. There's Avalanche that used to do all the Disney stuff that was owned by Disney, and there's Avalanche that makes Just Cause.
I thought they were the same for some reason. But.
No, they're two. It's confusing, but there's two. So Avalanche Software is the Salt Lake City company that did Disney Infinity and all the Pixar games and Tak and the Power of Juju. And they're the ones doing Hogwarts Legacy. Avalanche Studios does Just Cause and Mad Max.
See, that's the Avalanche that would make more sense because they've made open world games, action open world games.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Avalanche, Just Cause Avalanche is in Stockholm. And Disney Infinity Hogwarts Avalanche is in Salt Lake City.
Yep.
Which is funny because those are the two cities I had to go to for that stupid Star Wars show I did 5 years ago. But not only for one of those companies.
Interesting. So. That's weird. Let's see. Next up, Returnal. That's Housemarque's game. I'll say this. I'm a lot more hyped for this after the developer doc that they put out, or the developer walkthrough that they put out. That really shows the loop. This is a roguelike game that you play over and over again, or a simple way to describe it, it's a Groundhog Day style video game. And this was the first time that they really showed, okay, this is how it works. This is the loop. You go through, you try to clear the map, you don't do it, you fail, you go back, you relearn, and you try to do it all over again. The one thing I loved about this is you can really see the Housemarque voxel stuff in this demo, and also like the bullet hell stuff. There's like a bullet hell shmup type element to this game.
The Housemarque pedigree is in there.
Yeah, which is great because when I first started seeing this game, I'm like, you can't even tell that this is a Housemarque game, but yeah, you absolutely can. It's pretty clever how they've worked it into it. The other thing I would say too is they put out another trailer that was more like story driven. And it almost feels like it could be set in, like, the Aliens universe. Like, I know you don't like Prometheus. I do like it. And I know you hate it. But the one trailer, the story trailer
they put out... Alien Covenant.
Yeah, it's true. The one trailer that they put out, like, around the same period, like a week ago, really gave me a Prometheus vibe. As far as, like, what's going on underneath the hood in this game, I'm really intrigued by it. Now that we've seen, like, the gameplay, I don't know, man. This game's looking pretty hot, I think. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it looks. I was always interested, both because of the pedigree and because of the concept. like I'll wait and see how it works, like with my hands on it. Like I'm pretty fickle when it comes to like, you know, the roguelike repetition stuff. Like I can count on one hand the games of that kind that have actually held my attention for more than 2 or 3 repetitions.
Yeah.
This looks like maybe, you know, especially coming off the back of a year with Hades in it, that really set a new standard for that kind of thing. It looks like they, you know, they're not necessarily comparable because they're a very different tone, but like, I think the new hotness in the roguelike idea is you have to make the repetition sort of part of the narrative. You have to kind of make it, it has to be acknowledged in universe that the repetition is happening.
Right.
And it looks like Returnal is, I mean, obviously it is because it's named that, but like, it's also like, that's part of why what's happening is rooted in the idea that you have to repeat things and they're not going to just have to be the same thing every time. And there's going to be an acknowledgement that is sort of the hook in universe.
Like the ending of this
I like that.
Is surprising because like she discovers like a house. Like this just looks like a house from 1980 or whatever. And
there's some, to me, I mean, I know it's not the same, but like I keep like thinking of things like when I see this game of like Contact.
Yeah.
Where she kind of hallucinates her father as the alien, or like I'm blanking on the name. The horror movie with the derelict spaceship, Event Horizon. Which obviously more Lovecraftian than this, but like the idea of like, you know, like hallucinations or like alternate realities and like kind of finding that in space. Yeah, I like that idea. Also, I saw someone note that Event Horizon could theoretically be considered an unofficial Warhammer 40K movie. Because the warp the ship goes through and comes out weird is very similar to the warp in Warhammer 40K, like the hyperspace place they go through.
Interesting.
But like there's people that are kind of like, oh, like you could consider Event Horizon the beginning of the 40K universe.
Wow, interesting.
Which is kind of a fun, one of those fun, dumb internet fan theories. But yeah, this is like more and more promising every time they show it. I know we were worried about Housemarque sort of making the transition to non-voxel, full 3D, more AAA sort of games, but it looks like they're getting it.
And it wasn't great. So this is looking hot, though. I'm pretty excited for it. It's also coming really soon. In fact, pretty much everything we're talking about in this section of the show is coming soon. Like Kena, I think, is the one with the release date that's the farthest out, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Kena is the end of August.
Yeah. Everything else is coming.
Everything else is like by June, early June.
Although they didn't give the date for Solar Ash, but the way they were talking
Solar
about
Ash feels like a done when it's done thing. Yeah. So, again, another small team.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And then next up, here was probably the biggest surprise, and depending on your perspective of whether it's a pleasant surprise or not, is that Oddworld Soulstorm, the next Oddworld game, not only is it coming soon, it's like finished. It launches like April 6th. You're also getting it for free with PlayStation Plus. It's going to be the free PlayStation Plus game in April. So like next month, you get this game for free.
It's about the right price.
I was actually surprised to find out that it's 2D. Like I really thought that like this might finally be the Oddworld game that like goes full 3D. But
they've done some full 3D Oddworld games, but
it wasn't like a shooter. It wasn't like
I can't remember the name of it, but it was like where you had the gun that shot the living bullets.
And it was like a Western,
Stranger's Wrath. Yeah, Stranger's Wrath.
It was like a Western.
There was at least I think Munch's Odyssey. I think was more behind the back. There has been one where I remember having to stare at the back of one of those stupid fucking things. But yeah, most of them are like the side-scrolling 2D kind of out of this world flashback style.
Yeah, I thought this one would not be that, but it is.
No, they're going. I saw like a whole documentary thing with like Lorne Lanning and all this stuff, and like he's basically talking about how like they get to basically they're kind of redoing the whole series now. Like they're redoing like, oh, it's like we can finally remake the games the way we always envisioned them or whatever. So that's why we got like kind of the Abe's Odyssey remake a while ago, and then Soulstorm is like is supposedly like I think something that they originally were gonna make and was gonna turn it into something else because the tech wasn't there. So, but yeah, it's another 2D side scrolling. I mean, it's in 3D graphics, but it's a 2D playing side scrolling Oddworld game like you've played for 25 years.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, and you may not know, because this series is old, and all they've really done is like remake the old games, and that may not have struck your fancy, so you may not have played them, but they're really kind of like Lemmings. You're basically rescuing all the other aliens from the factory and trying to get them out safely, and that's kind of what all the puzzles are built around, and the level design is built around. They can be
like
fun.
Lemmings if your cursor could get killed.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they can be fun, but I think they're for a very specific type of player. I don't think just anyone's going to enjoy it.
And like Werewolf before, if you want to talk about like you've seen everything the game has to trick you with, and then you've got half the game left to play.
Yeah, that's the way they've been
pretty
in the past.
much an Oddworld game.
Yeah, they run out of steam typically pretty quickly. I don't know if that'll happen with this one, but you're right.
I don't know.
They do it just ends up repeating over and over, and I think maybe they think that the part of the draw is all the different ways that you can die.
Maybe.
Because they do get pretty creative with that stuff, but...
Yeah. Also, Soulstorm is the subtitle of a really good expansion to a Warhammer 40K
real-time bring it right back again.
I'm just going to keep bringing Warhammer up.
Yeah.
This game is one of those things that just keeps coming up, and like it shows up in these presentations and stuff, and I'm just like, oh yeah, that's a thing.
Well, at least now we're getting it for free, right?
Yeah, I mean that...
Because they probably realized they couldn't sell it.
Play it.
I mean, let's be honest. They probably looked at pre-orders and they're like, "Let's see if we can crack a deal with Sony or Microsoft."
Yeah, it's just Oddworld's one of those properties where I'm just like you just. I mean, I respect for keeping at it, but like, there's a point at which I think fetch just isn't going to happen again.
Yeah.
You know, like the first couple were hits. And they've been kind of a constant presence in gaming to some degree or another since the PlayStation 1. But it's just such a one note franchise. It's weird.
And I think the problem is it is weird. And the characters are really ugly and they're just not appealing. I'll just be honest. Like the world, the universe, it's like, who wants to go into this gross like factory and save a bunch of slug looking aliens? I don't know.
And I mean, clearly they know it's called Oddworld. Like,
yeah,
they're not under any delusions over what they're making.
Yeah, I think it was birthed in a time where people were open to just about anything because video games were just like, at that point in time, had evolved from this 2D archaic thing to like 3D, and people were like, whatever, aliens, cool. And like some of the IP from that era doesn't work in the modern day.
But I think Oddworld, I think has not been helped by the advances in graphics.
Nope, it makes it less appealing.
Yeah, because like early on the PlayStation 1, you can kind of look at Abe and be like, well, he's a weird little green guy with big eyes. It's fine. Now you look at him in this game and it's just like, oh my God,
it's
horrifying.
Like, it's like Earthworm Jim. Like, I don't think there'll ever be another Earthworm Jim game.
Yeah, like we don't need like a photoreal Earthworm Jim. No one wants that.
It's grotesque. Who wants to look at that for like 12 hours while they play a game? It's interesting, though, to look back at that old IP and try to figure out which stuff might still work. Not a lot of it does in 2021, to be perfectly honest with you. It just doesn't. And then next up, as I talked about, they showed off more Deathloop. And again, I drafted this on my fantasy team. And the reason I drafted it was because it was something unique. I knew it was coming out this year. It was towards the end of the draft, although I thought I drafted this maybe a little too high still. But
you could have drafted it last.
Because you weren't going to draft it at all. But the concept of the game was really unique and something different. It is also a roguelike. And you're basically playing kind of the same section of the game over and over, but this one really kind of takes it to a different place. There are 8 different assassins that you have to kill. And then the assassins get involved in killing the assassins. And each time you try to kill an assassin, you keep all the weapons that you earned and any skills that you earned in your first run through. So it's not like the second one you're starting over from scratch again. And then any clues that you collect throughout the course of the game help you solve the riddles of the other assassins later. It's crazy. Like, it's very hard to even explain how this works. I think that might be the danger of it, though, is that it's hard to explain to someone what it is and how it works and why it might be awesome. And I think Bethesda is going to have a problem with that as far as marketing is concerned. The trailer they put out is awesome. It has like this OST song that sounds like it could have been ripped straight out of a James Bond film. And the presentation of this trailer is great. And then they put this out, and then like 3 days later, they literally just did a developer doc where they're like, okay, this is exactly what Deathloop is, and this is how you play it, and this is what happens when you play it the second time, and how it all ties together. They did like a drawing on a whiteboard, Matt.
I mean, they needed it. They needed to do that.
That's what I'm saying. Like, when you have to do that to explain your game,
yeah,
that's not a good
sign. We've said in the past, like, Deathloop is a hard elevator pitch.
Yeah.
Like, it takes too long to explain. I think Deathloop is going to bomb.
Oh, financially, I absolutely think it's going to bomb.
But I do think you're right that it's going to review well.
Yep, I do too. I feel more confident about that after this event.
I think it's one of those games where you have to you have to play it. You have to get your hands on it and get your mind around it. And reviewers are obviously going to have to do that as part of their job. And players, I think, are just going to look at it and be like, "This is another shooter." Like it's hard to differentiate yourself. And that video with the whiteboard is probably helpful, but how many people are really going to see that?
Nobody, like hardly anyone. It's like, I think it's going to do really bad unless it reviews like through the freaking roof. Unless it gets like 9s or 10s, like it's doomed. And it's not. It's not going to get a 9 or a 10.
It's just the Bethesda curse again.
It is. But it's like, to me, this game is more innovative than games like Dishonored.
Oh, sure.
But it's also not going to get a fair shake, just like Dishonored.
Yeah. Also, like the games Bethesda publishes that have bombed are very diverse,
and they're good. They're good games.
Yeah.
Bethesda to me is the king of good games that don't sell.
Yep. Like the last really like bad Bethesda published third kind of second party game was probably Wet.
Yeah.
And that was like almost 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's so long ago I had forgotten about it. So I don't know. I'm excited for the game, personally. I think it's going to be fun. I'm not a huge roguelike guy, but you put it in a shooter, then, okay, maybe I'll give it a little bit more of a chance than I would if it's like a melee game or whatever. So I'm excited for it. I'm okay with the fact that I drafted it now. Based upon the media that's come out for it over the last week, I think it'll do okay. I don't think it's going to like completely tank.
Yeah. I think it'll review pretty well.
Yeah. And so that's it. That was
there's a tension there though, because I'm like, on one hand, it might review pretty well because like reviewers like things that are different. This is not the same thing they've had to play 5 times this week. On the flip side, sometimes reviewers kind of like revolt against games that make them try to have to learn something.
That's true.
So it'll be interesting to see which direction that falls.
Yep. Probably somewhere in the middle, in all honesty. Yeah. You'll have a couple guys who will try to give it a 9 because it's like just completely groundbreaking and does something new.
Then you have clicks with them.
Then you have the person who's like, "Oh, this is like too much to learn. It's too complicated.
This isn't Call of Duty and it sucks.
This is a 6." And then somewhere in the middle, you'll find the aggregate. So, like, if it gets anywhere close to an 8, I think I'll be happy with that. And it probably won't. It'll probably get like a 7, 7.5 is my guess. We'll see. But anyway, that's it for the State of Play as far as all the big stuff that was in it. And now that we've kind of run through it, I guess I can see where people might be a little disappointed. Because while we knew that there wasn't going to be first-party stuff in this, the third-party stuff in it wasn't, like, through the roof. It wasn't
amazing. Like, it was a kind of a bridge State of Play.
Yeah.
You know, like, we got to be here to get there kind of thing.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people were hoping for... there's a lot of people like you are still laboring under the delusion that God of War might come out this year. So
that delusion has been shattered at this point because Cory Barlog said last week that it'll come out when it comes out. So that's pretty much code for it's not coming out this year.
Yeah,
it's not even really code.
Although Guerrilla did reconfirm that yes, we are still planning to get Horizon out this year. So hopefully. They make their target because otherwise Sony's got a holiday with nothing again.
Yeah, because otherwise you're going to get Ratchet in the middle of the year, and you know Insomniac's going to hit that they don't delay. Once they announce their dates, they hit them. So we're going to get that in the middle of the year, and then what?
Yep.
Yeah, which is another reason why I thought God of War had to come out this year, but hey, what do I know?
Nope.
It does not look like it's going to happen. And speaking,
Breath of the Wild 2 doesn't look too good either.
It's not looking good either. Yep. When they showed Skyward Sword, I was like...
Yeah, Skyward Sword, and he literally said, "We'll have news about Breath of the Wild 2 for you later this year." It's like, oh, no.
Matt, when that happened, I was sick as a dog. I literally thought that I might die on that day. And I didn't care about anything on that day. anything. Like I literally, all I worried about was like holding on to life on that day. And I watched that and I still yelled, "Fuck you" at the TV. Yep.
Yep.
Actually, it was, "Oh, fuck you," is what I said. Yep. So I agree with you. I don't think
I just could not. I mean, I could believe it. Again, I could believe it because I know Nintendo, but it's just like every once in a while, it's like, yeah, we know what you really want to hear about this other game we're making that you really, really want to play and care about, but I don't know, maybe later this year. Meanwhile, give us $60 for the worst console Zelda.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Like you're not even now you're gonna port like the Wii U HD versions of Twilight Princess and Wind Waker over for me. Like,
yep.
So I can play something I actually like. Like, really?
Well, they are taking out like all the motion controls if you want.
I mean, yeah, that's nice, but I my problems with Skyward Sword go well beyond just the motion controls.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's a bad Zelda game.
I still remember like the cinematics where he has like the flappy jaw.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I remember where like it was the first time I could remember a Nintendo game that had a game-breaking bug in it.
Yeah. That room where you could get trapped and like it would wipe your save.
Yeah, and they had to patch it.
Yeah.
It was like I think that was the first time Nintendo ever had to patch something like that? I can't remember anything else like that.
Yeah, I mean as far as like something that you can't patch because they couldn't patch it. It's like you have to just put out new discs basically, and then they're like, maybe just don't go in there and do this. It's like, but that doesn't work. Like,
it doesn't make any sense. Also, who's gonna know that?
I know.
Is it a fucking 10-year-old kid playing that game gonna know not to do the no? Like it's.
But to your point, it's very rare for Nintendo to have something like that in a final version of its game. It just
highly unusual.
Yeah, highly unusual. So, we're supposed to celebrate the 35th anniversary of Zelda with Skyward Sword.
Apparently, we're supposed to celebrate the 35th anniversary of Metroid with nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
Oh, I guess there's supposed to be a life-size Metroid Prime helmet coming out, which I'm like, awesome. Also, will not fit on my giant head, so I don't know why I'm supposed to be excited about that. Like, granted, Samus is a woman, so maybe her head's smaller than mine. But Master Chief's helmet doesn't fit on my head either, so clearly that's a me problem. But yeah, if you can't tell, we've talked about it. I'm a Metroid fan. I'm a little bitter that Metroid's turning 35 and it's getting nothing, just like when it turned 30 and just like when it turned 25. Like, I know it's not as big as Zelda or Mario, but you should put some fucking respect on Samus Aran's name.
It's not that small either.
No, it's not.
Let's be honest. It's crazy. All right, let's move on.
At the very least, I think Samus in the armor, you show that to almost anyone who grew up in the 80s and they'll at least know what it is.
Yes.
Or kind of be like, oh, it's that Nintendo game. Like they'll see it. I'm not saying it's as iconic as Luigi or something, but like it's important.
Too, so I think to older players it is. Absolutely. Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, I'm not
at least
writing
give me the
Metroid
fucking Prime trilogy collection or something.
For them to get
there's a lot of year left. Yeah, you're right. But like, I don't know.
It's not looking good. I know that much. That's for sure.
I need some kind of collection or something. Like, and even if it's not a new game, I need like a Metroid collection, like that Capcom thing that just came out, the arcade.
I mean, what if you just remastered the Metroid Prime games?
Yeah, just give us the Prime trilogy. Throw some nice remasters of Metroid and Sub-Zero Mission and Fusion and Super Metroid together.
Metroid Prime trilogy, 1080p, sold.
Yeah,
sold. We'll see. All right, let's move on to something even less encouraging.
To more characters in power armor getting disrespected.
Yes, exactly. That's a good analogy. EA announced this week and BioWare announced this week that the grand project to turn Anthem into something that you would want to play longer than 20 hours has been abandoned, and Anthem 2.0 will not happen. And that may have made some people sad, but the flip side of this is that in conjunction with that announcement, BioWare and EA also announced that the new Dragon Age will not have any online functionality at all.
That's right. They can be taught.
How do you feel about that, Matt? Because, look,
Great.
I know I figured you'd feel that way, but
Dragon Age should be a single-player RPG, and you should stop trying to cram multiplayer functions in it. Like, I didn't mind it in Mass Effect because, like, the co-op mode was fun. The gameplay lent itself well to it. But as we all know, like, multiplayer Melee is tricky at best.
Yeah.
And there's very few games really handle that well. Like I think like For Honor, a few games like that. A game by we didn't talk about it in the State of Play, but Sifu.
Yeah.
That game, which looks awesome.
Yeah, we should have talked about that. That's my
being
bad.
made by the guys the people who made that MMO Absolver. That's what it was called, Absolver. That has really good online melee combat. Like it can be done, but like, do you really trust BioWare to do a satisfying sword combat system in a multiplayer add-on mode to an RPG that is really supposed to be a single-player game? Like, I just
don't like the idea of saying we couldn't get game A to work, so we're just going to change game B. Or we're going to take something out of game B that still has a possibility of actually working. To your point, maybe not. It's not. Yeah,
I don't think it did. I think it was focus your resources. Dragon Age 4 needs to be a home run. And
for BioWare, definitely.
For BioWare, yeah. And it just trying to like branch out into a multiplayer mode that has no precedent in that franchise is a bad idea at this point. Like focus on on the strengths. Focus on what worked before, and what worked before is a single-player RPG, which has never. I would argue that no Dragon Age has really pulled all the elements together quite right, but maybe this time. I did really love the back when they showed the trailer, the first the real kind of trailer / teaser at the Game Awards in December. Somebody pointed it because the character Solus, the elf mage guy, is in that trailer pretty prominently. And someone pointed out on Twitter, how's that going to work in my game? Because I killed him in Inquisition. And a week or so ago, we got one of the lead designers on Dragon Age 4 retweeted that tweet from December and said, I can't believe we had to remake part of the game because of this shit. Because I don't think they remembered that Solus could die.
Oh my god!
So they had to come up with and then one of the Mass Effect developers popped in and was like, "So which solution did you go with? Is there going to be another character who looks suspiciously like him, who just like delivers the same information like we did with Rex in Mass Effect 2?"
Huh.
And it's just like I thought that was hilarious because like the fans like know more about the intricacies of all the weird things you can do in those games than the developers because it's so twisty and turny. You would think that
they'd have a super fan working there who would have picked up on that crap.
You'd think getting Solus to die is not easy, as I understand it, but like it is an outcome that can happen, so they have to plan for it. Now, clearly, you could also just do it as like, you thought he was dead, but he really was magic-y and wasn't dead. Kind of thing. It's like, it could be that simple. It's but I thought that was very funny. Yeah, I mean, it's a shame what happens to Anthem here. Like, it doesn't surprise me. Like, I didn't think there was really a way to salvage that game without remaking it, basically. We've talked about Anthem a lot. Like, I enjoy it moment to moment. I like the gameplay. I like flying around and landing on stuff, and the shooting feels pretty good. It's all kind of derived from Mass Effect.
Right now makes me want to go play it. Like,
it's still up. You're just never going to get new content.
Yeah, they're going to keep the servers live, at least for a while.
Yeah, I will say this. I would not be against the idea of folding a lot of the power armor ideas in this game into Mass Effect 5.
Yeah.
Like some more flight-oriented Mass Effect 5 gameplay.
I'd be down with that in a heartbeat.
Treat me wrong.
I mean, they nailed it. They nailed being Iron Man in this game, basically.
Yeah.
It feels amazing, and I really love that part of it, but you can't just keep shooting the same enemies for like 100 and some hours without any reason to do it. Like, it's like I said a minute ago. It's like it's great for the first 20 hours, and then you're like, okay, now what? And they never figured out the now what. They just never did it.
The loot isn't exciting, and nothing is visible on the character, really. You can customize the armor and do everything, but it's outside of the weapon, the actual weapons you're wielding, nothing really matters. Like, you can mess with a cape, I guess, but like, it wasn't like Destiny where like you get these things and you immediately get to look at them and equip them and like you change how your character looks and mess with that. Anthem never found a way to keep hammering the dopamine button in your brain the way a loot game needs to keep you playing.
Yep, because the combat did, but the loot didn't.
Yeah.
And that's what drives these games, like it or not. That's what drives people to keep playing these games for a year, 2 years, 3. In Destiny's case, how many years has it been? Like, it's impressive what Bungie's managed to do.
seven or eight at this point. I think.
I mean, even though I'm not a big Destiny player, it's like I said, my buddy from Philly loves it, and it's just squeezed every ounce of entertainment that he can out of it, and was like, okay, now what's another game like this that I can play? And I couldn't tell him Anthem. That's the sad part. He was looking for another game, and I was like, if I told him to get Anthem, he'd have spent the money on it, and literally like 2 weeks later, he'd have been like, okay, now what do I do?
Now what?
You played this,
and
like,
you couldn't tell him.
and I couldn't
tell
tell
him
him.
Avengers.
I'd be like, yeah, I know, I did play it, and I can't tell you what to do now because there's nothing to do now. So
you couldn't tell him Avengers either.
Nope, same deal.
It's like, Destiny gets a lot of flack on kind of what it is and how, but clearly it's not as easy as we might want to think it is.
I think that's a good point, Matt. Games as a service are not as easy as you think to create this compelling loop that makes people want to keep coming back. It all has to start, I think, with rewarding combat. I think if you don't have that, you got nothing. And then after that, it's about the loot and
I also
and new content.
You cannot underestimate how satisfying it is to see like a purple crystal fly out of something in Destiny. Like that's part of it. It seems stupid and simple and like it shouldn't matter that much, but like seeing that those glowing things pop out of the enemy when you kill it, it's like that matters. And Anthem has nothing like that. Just the little loot thing just instantly appears on the ground,
and it's a
like
mess.
That little tactile difference of the physics on the crystal, like
all that stuff
it matters.
It really does matter. Little stuff that people don't think makes a difference makes a big difference, especially when you're talking about psychology. And let's be honest, that's what we're talking about with these games.
Those games are at heart a psychological manipulation simulator, and that it counts. It's a big deal.
And if you're not good at that, your game's gonna fail. That's all.
And like Anthem if you had nailed that aspect of Anthem, that plus how much fun it is to just land in that game, could have really pulled me through a lot of dumb shit.
It's very similar to Kratos getting his axe back. It's that same kind of rewarding thwomp that it just feels right, but the rest of it, it just couldn't hold up its end of the bargain.
It's also like Anthem is, because every once in a while you'd find people in the open world that are doing the same thing and like, do little like world quest stuff and things. I loaded it up every few weeks or every couple of months to see what was going on. The answer was usually nothing. Yeah. But like you find other people, you find the world quest thing. And a couple of times, like, we were fighting world stuff or big things or whatever. And like it would end and we win the thing. And then one of the other players would come and like land next to me. And like Anthem's one of the only multiplayer games where like a thing that the other player does that's supposed to look cool actually made me say that guy looked cool doing that.
Yeah.
Like it's like usually when you're supposed, like Destiny has the thing where you can teleport in with like the different effects and stuff, and I never even noticed those. But when like an Anthem player would land next to me in like the Iron Man pose, I'd be like, that's cool.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Like it would make me think that guy was cool for a second, and like very few games pull that off.
To your point about drops, like I know you can't see the B-roll, but watching this B-roll, you can't see the drops because every time you kill an enemy, and I'll say this, it looks amazing. Like they explode in like 1 billion particle effects, but you can't see the drops. So to your point of like how the physics of a drop works and how it can be enticing to make people want to keep playing, you can't even see them in Anthem.
No.
They get covered up by these sparks and all this other crap that's going all over the place. So it just almost like some parts of it were overbaked, other parts of it were underbaked. Do you think we'll ever see another Anthem? Do you think they'll ever reapproach this IP, or is it just like cancer now?
I mean, I think to EA it will be cancer. I would not. I mean, I think BioWare could take the world of Anthem and turn it into a pretty decent single-player game.
Because it worked.
Or
I mean,
like
it snared people
or
in.
like a co-op. I think if you wanted to do something along the lines of Outriders with it, it would work.
Yeah.
If you focused it more on, because that was one of the big things with Anthem was I never even finished the campaign because the BioWare storytelling just wasn't there.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yep.
I can't tell you the name of anybody in that world. I can't even remember where anything was in that hub because it was also unmemorable.
I can't remember what anything was called, where any place was called.
I think the weird scientist guy's name was Matthias, but I only remember that because it's mostly my name.
Yeah.
Like there's no and he was in the demo, like he did the demo where he got split in like multiple versions of himself.
Yep.
Why do I remember the quest, the demo, more than anything I played in the main game?
Because in all honesty, there weren't many quests like that in the final game. I mean, let's be honest.
No.
It's
that's
pretty
the other
shocking.
thing is it felt like that's why I was always a little skeptical about like the Anthem Next thing, because it really felt like that game was a very rigid structure. Yeah. It felt like if you wanted to do anything interesting with it, you would have had to take it apart and put it back together.
Yep. And
like,
ultimately, they made the right decision. It wasn't worth it.
No,
they could have spent.
I think they it's sad and it sucks that these guys had to work for a year on it.
Yeah.
And just get denied. But like, I think it's the only logical choice.
They made the right choice. They would have ended up dumping a ton of money into this, and it would not have saved the game.
No, you can't salvage it. Like you would have to do like, and so few games have managed that. Like, No Man's Sky came back from the brink, but No Man's Sky is not the same kind of thing. It's
also it was a smaller studio with a smaller bet. Like, EA had already put a crap ton of money into this game. Mm-hmm. And it's just looking at it like it's like throwing good money after bad.
Plus, the other thing is like No Man's Sky was already profitable,
right?
Like just based on how much it sold at launch.
Yeah, and honestly, most people liked it still. So
the only other thing I can think of that compares would maybe be when Square completely rebuilt Final Fantasy 14 from the ground up.
Yeah.
But that was like a big deal. That was like they took the whole team, said just start over. They destroyed the original game. Like the original game, the destruction of the original Final Fantasy 14 is a backstory plot point to the current Final Fantasy 14. Yeah. Like it's acknowledged that happened. And like they made a big deal of it and spent basically the money to build a new video game out of it.
Yep.
And EA was clearly not going to do that.
Well, there's a reason why there's only 2 stories that you can tell. Yep. Because it typically doesn't work. If you look at the law of averages on this, EA made the right call. So
it's just good money after bad.
I will say this, Matt. This is one of the most disappointing games, at least for me, maybe of my entire career. As far as having seen it at events, played the beta, and then what the final game was, it's one of the most disappointing games of my entire career. And just watching this B-roll, it sucks. It could have been so awesome. But it was not, and it wasn't. And now you're right. I don't think we'll ever see another Anthem. So there you go. Anthem RIP. Once again, another also case where I wish I had taps loaded up on the TriCaster so I could play it. Someday I will do it. I will play it.
Anthem also suffers from the dumb name syndrome. That was a terrible name for that game.
Yep, and it doesn't say much about
it. Tells me nothing. And I still don't. I mean, I played the game. I still don't really know what the Anthem thing is.
When I hear Anthem now, you want to know what I think, Matt? Kneeling. And the controversy over Colin Kaepernick. That's what I think of when I hear the word Anthem. So
that was like right around the same year.
It was around the same time. Yep. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to talk about some Pokemans. So as I said, we're not going to go in depth about the latest Nintendo Direct, which I think most people thought was probably more disappointing than the State of Play from Sony. I don't know if I would agree with that. I don't think the Direct was as bad as people are saying.
No, I
get the disappointment.
There's more stuff in that the Final Fantasy notwithstanding. There's more stuff in that State of Play I want to play than the Pokemon.
Well, the Pokemon stuff wasn't in the Direct, so
the Pokemon was separate. But look, there's only so much Pokemon a man can take. Like that's all I'm saying. Like,
I'm right there with you, Matt. So they had a separate Pokemon Direct, kind of, to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Pokemon. Which, something else that makes me feel really old. That Pokemon is now 25 years old.
Although remember, it came out in Japan a couple of years before it did here.
It did. Yeah. Well, I remember, I had just started at GameSpot when Red and Blue came out. I had just got a new Game Boy Color to replace my old Game Boy, and they put out the colorized versions of them. That's right when I started working at GameSpot. So, that's 23 years, 22 years, something like that.
Yeah, it came out here in 98.
I can't believe I've been working in this industry that long. It's nuts.
Came out in 98, and I beat Pokemon Blue waiting in line for Episode 1 tickets.
Yeah.
The following year.
That lines up. Yeah, it absolutely lines up. So here we are 25 years later. Nintendo and Game Freak has not stopped releasing Pokemon games.
Can't stop, won't stop, no matter how much you might want them to.
Yeah, exactly. As evidenced by the fact that now Nintendo has got into this rut of thinking that it needs to remake every Pokemon game. And that is the case here, as it is now remaking Diamond and Pearl. And Matt, I will say this. To me, Diamond and Pearl is the least remarkable Pokemon game ever. I cannot think of anything, and there probably is something, but personally, I cannot think of anything that this entry introduced. Can you?
I'm
sure there is something. I can't think of it.
Didn't this one? I thought this one introduced like the god Pokemon in some way, or so, expanded that somehow. I don't remember it very well. The only thing I really remember about Diamond and Pearl is that's the review where we made Paul Bonanno play Prince in a diamond filled bathtub, which was probably not a thing we would do today. Like we didn't blackface him or anything, but it was weird. It was. And
Thank God you didn't blackface him.
No, I mean we weren't stupid, but like we're like it was. I don't know. Every time someone said Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, a song got stuck in my head. I'm just like, we got to do something about Prince in this review. So that's what happened. That was one of the instances of me being editorial and being able to say like, this is what should happen in this, and everybody just did it because I said to do it, and it was like, yeah, it wasn't really much more to that other than hey, that's the same as the name of that Prince song.
That's it.
That's all we had.
Sometimes
really.
that's all you need.
Yeah, that time we might have needed a little more.
Yeah, in that case. But I can't think of anything. First of all, I would never look at Diamond and Pearl and be like, oh my God, they need to remake that. Like, I just don't. I have no affinity for it. Well,
here's the thing. I know someone who is very excited about these remakes because she grew up at the right time to play Diamond and Pearl.
So it was like her Red and Blue, basically.
Yeah, like she played Red and Blue and Gold, Silver, but like Diamond and Pearl were one of her, right at the right age to really get into it sort of games. And so and the thing about Pokemon is all of them are that to someone.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
So this remake isn't really for us. Like, what am I gonna? I can't even name you the new Pokemon in this one. Really, I mean, once you pass Gold, Silver, you're kind of out of my wheelhouse.
Me too.
Yeah. It's just sort of this blur until you get to Sun and Moon.
Yep.
And so I may or may not really get into playing the Diamond and Pearl remakes, but there's a place for them and there's a reason for them to exist. And I am, as we've said, I'm always in favor of bringing old content forward if there's an audience for it. So like the more you can pull the old Pokemon games forward, make them more accessible, make them better, make them work on Switch. Great. Cool.
It'll be interesting to see if they take the feedback from the remakes of Red and Blue.
Yeah, I'm curious how this will be in comparison to like the Pokemon, Pokemon Go, not Pokemon Go, Pokemon Let's Go. Was that what that was? The Pikachu and Eevee ones? Yeah, will it be like that, or will it be more like a straight remake? It's hard to say, like because they've had success with both. Like the Let's Go games were very successful, but also like Heart Silver and Soul Silver and Heart Gold were also very successful, and so were Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I still say there's room for a Let's Go Gold and Silver if they ever feel like doing that.
Absolutely. But again, I think you're talking about those games being in our wheelhouse versus somebody else's. I think Red and Blue, everyone has an affinity for
when that came out. So there's someone out there who was 10 when Silver and Gold came out that would definitely be into that.
I think Red
or
and
at least
Blue
would want to give their kids.
Everyone has an affinity for those because it's the original 151.
A lot of people do. There's a bit of a backlash in the fandom right now against the G1 and G2 because it feels like the kind of the older fans are sort of like monopolizing the idea that like that's Pokemon and everything that came after it. It's just sort of like this also ran.
I kind of feel that way.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. But that's how I feel about it. You're right. But again, the younger you get, my niece's first major Pokemon experience was like Sun and Moon.
Yeah.
So like that's the thing is
the starter Pokemon in that are probably what she resonates with. I get it. Yeah.
And she doesn't give a shit who Arcanine is.
Yeah.
It's like there's all these characters, all these Pokemon that were never important again. But if you grew up at that time, if you played those games first, if you watched the anime, like they are important to you, even if you didn't realize that Ekans and Arbok are called that because they are snake and cobra backwards.
Yeah.
Which almost every day but almost every day on Twitter you see someone suddenly realize that, and it's amazing.
The revelation.
Like, wait a minute. It's like, yes.
That's funny. Really though, the big story was a brand new game that Nintendo announced. Pokemon Legends Arceus. AKA
that's a hard C, believe it or not. I did not know that until I think this time.
Okay. AKA Nintendo's answer to Temtem, which has
Right.
been on the market, an open world Pokemon clone, which has been on the market for well over a year at this point and has been hugely
really
successful. And is really good. This is Nintendo's answer, it appears, an open world action RPG set in the Pokemon universe. People, to your point about Harry Potter, have been asking for this for a really long time.
Yeah.
We got like a pseudo open world with the last Pokemon game, but it was this weird kind of instanced thing that was happening. This appears to be just straight up open world.
I mean, up to the point that it does the Breath of the Wild shot.
Yeah.
Where, that zooms the camera over the hilltop and past the main character and into the field.
Yeah.
I saw a very funny tweet. It was somebody, it was a screenshot of Breath of the Wild with looking at the field, and this one looking at the field, and Genshin Impact looking at the field, and like one other game looking at the field. And it's like, are these all in the same universe?
That's hilarious.
And somebody replied with like, it's a field, bro. Go outside.
They really exist. Everyone seems to be hung up on the graphics in this. Instead of just discussing the fact that, holy crap, we're getting an open world Pokemon game, everyone's like, the frame rate sucks, it stutters. And they're not wrong. Yeah. The frame rate does suck, and it does stutter really badly in this trailer. And it's weird.
And it doesn't seem to look good enough to warrant that, really.
I know. I can't. I mean, it's Game Freak. Let's be honest. Game Freak is developing this. It's not a top shelf developer from a technical perspective.
In Sun and Shield, Sword and Shield, there were cutscenes where a Pokemon had to turn around and go out the other way, and the Pokemon character model just rotates.
Oh, I know.
In place.
There's no animation for it.
Like, no, there is some PS2 era shit in almost every Game Freak game. It's just something you have to accept or don't play them. Like that's just how it's going to be.
Would Nintendo ever dare to hand something like this to a more capable studio?
Apparently, the answer is no.
I mean, what if this game comes out, though, and it's just technically a disaster, and
I don't know.
it gets beaten up by critics for it?
Like, they own the license, but Pokemon Company still is technically a separate company that owns Pokemon.
Right.
I assume that somewhere down far enough, Nintendo has to keep the Pokemon Company happy in some way. So I don't know.
But I mean, wouldn't they be happy if they sold a lot more copies of their games?
Maybe.
If the games were better?
I can't explain that. The thing about Temtem is, like, I know a lot of Pokemon fans who played it and were like mad. Like, because they played Temtem.
Like, why don't I have a Pokemon game?
This is what this could have been for like 10 years now.
Yeah, because it's a little dinky indie studio that made Temtem. I mean, Game Freak isn't gigantic. I mean, they're like 40 or 50 guys.
But there's elements in Temtem that would not require like high-end tech to implement in Pokemon. They just haven't. And one of the reasons they haven't is because they don't have to. Like, it sells automatically, which is interesting because that's such a different philosophy from Nintendo. Like,
it is.
Nintendo's internal stuff is like, not only do they not want to make the same game twice, even if it would sell, they like refuse to keep things the same even when they work. You know, like, there's a lot of times my complaint about Nintendo sequels is like, could you just make Zelda again, please? Like, you don't need to reinvent the wheel every time, but Pokemon Company has the opposite problem.
Yeah, it doesn't do enough.
No, yeah.
So I do like some elements that I saw in that, though. Like, it looks like there's actual like stealth, so you're like sneaking up on the Pokemon. And then you can throw the Pokeballs from like 50 yards away like you're Brett Favre and like capture Pokemon. Like, I like that. That is changing things up a little bit at least.
Yeah.
But ultimately, do I feel like Game Freak's going to be able to pull off an open world action RPG? Probably not. I just really don't. I don't have a lot of confidence that that's going to be the case. Call me crazy, but that studio just has not shown to me that it's capable of doing something like that. I mean,
they haven't shown that they're capable of upping the tech quotient from game to game of the games they've been making over and over for 25 years.
Yeah. Like,
this brand new venture feels, I mean, hopefully they've got like support and consultant going on from like, Nintendo, the Zelda team and, other, Monolith and people who like you do have experience making that kind of thing. But like, I don't know, like it's not
coming out this year.
I'll give them credit for that. It's an experiment.
Like, they're trying something new, which is good. It's not coming out this year, though. So A little weird that they put it in the Pokemon 25 celebration because it's not coming out during the actual anniversary year. It is coming early 2022, Q1 2022.
Mm-hmm.
The remake of Diamond and Pearl is coming this year. I think at the end of the year, Q4.
Yeah.
So not much of a celebration, really. They're remaking one game, and then they announced
It's even weirder because it's a prequel to Diamond and Pearl.
Right. And my question is...
How am I supposed to know that?
Yeah.
Like, did something happen in Diamond and Pearl that requires further explanation?
Not that I remember, to be honest with you.
I don't remember what I mean. The only Pokemon game with a story I really remember is Black and White.
Yeah. Because it was the whole, like, PETA, like...
Yeah, the PETA story. Yeah, where it's like, hey... Why don't we talk about the fact that we force animals to cockfight with children all day? Like,
and that disappeared, oddly enough.
Yeah, they never touched that one again.
So do you think this game, and let's see if I can pronounce it correctly this time, Arceus, do you think that that's going to be Pokemon going forward? Do you think that's the way all the games are going to be now?
No, I think it's going to be a side thing. Unless this thing sells like 1 billion copies, obviously, then it probably will switch. But Nintendo will follow the money on that one. But I feel like this is going to be a side thing, and you'll still have the turn-based RPG as the main series.
We'll see.
It's just too easy to crank those out, I think.
But at least Nintendo's doing a better job of celebrating Pokemon than it is Metroid or Zelda.
I mean, Pokemon makes them a lot more money, I think. But
Yep. So anyway, that's what's happening for Pokemon in the near future. If you were looking for like a new game that's a turn-based game, it looks like you're going to have to wait at least a couple more years for that.
Yeah. Although, if you haven't played Diamond and Pearl long enough, it's kind of a new game.
Yeah, I guess it is. New plot.
What's the difference?
But all the Pokemon, all the Pokemon that are in it if you've continued playing the later games. So there's not much surprise there, but still... better than nothing, I guess, as we're getting with Metroid as of right now.
It's more, I would kill to have a remake of a Metroid game. Just, another, I don't know what you'd remake at this point.
I don't either.
I don't know.
I didn't think they'd remake Diamond and Pearl, to be honest with you. So there you go. Okay, let's move on. We're going to talk next about PlayStation VR 2. We're not going to talk about it very long because we don't have a lot of details about it. But to me, it is very important. And so I did want to get kind of Matt and I's takes on it based upon what we know so far. I've known for a long time PlayStation VR 2 was coming. I knew for a fact it was coming. But Sony had not talked about it until this week. And then it still didn't really talk about it all that much this week. It posted a blog on the PlayStation blog basically saying, yep, it's coming. And then it included a couple details. The first detail is that there's going to be brand new motion controllers, so you can ditch those Move controllers, which sucks because I didn't buy the Move controllers until I got PlayStation VR. And so I got PlayStation VR, and then I got the Move controllers, and I think I've used them 3 times. And they weren't cheap. They were still like $40 or something like that when I got them. And so I got those and hardly used them, and now they're going to be worthless because the new one's not going to use them. But Sony did say that the new controllers are going to incorporate a lot of the functionality from the DualSense, which means like haptic triggers and haptic feedback, which I think for VR, that's great, and I think that makes a lot of sense. So that's all good. The big issue that I have really is that they announced that, it's going to be hyper powerful and way better, and we have these great screens, but we're not going to talk about that stuff yet. But then really the big thing to me is that it has a cord. And I know there are technical hurdles to having a wireless VR HMD. I get that. I get that streaming the video to a device may or may not be quite there technically. My argument is that if it's not quite there technically, then don't do it yet. Wait and save PlayStation VR 2 until the end of the PlayStation 5 cycle. Because one thing I think that has been proven over the last year with VR, Matt, is that it's all about being cord-free. It really is. Like, if you look at Quest is taking off big time. I have friends who don't game at all who all got Quest 2 for Christmas. They were all reaching out. They weren't reaching out to me about the PS5 and the Xbox Series X at Christmas, by the way. They were reaching out to me about Oculus Quest 2. And they all got it, and they all love it. Like, all of them were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I waited so long to get VR. And I'm like, no, you actually picked the perfect time to get VR. Because up until now, you would have had to have had a monster PC. It would have been tethered to your PC. You weren't able to play it wherever you wanted. It's a completely different ball game with Oculus Quest 2. I just don't think that there's a place in the market for a corded VR HMD anymore, Matt. Do you?
Probably not on the level of Oculus, the way that's selling. I think you're stuck with it with PlayStation, like, because one of the reasons Oculus works is the hardware is on board, right. And Sony's just not going to do that. Like the PlayStation 5 is going to be the heart of the hardware power, and to do that, you're going to have to be corded. And at one point, I know we talked about like the idea of having it kind of be modular, and you could have like a slightly powerful something in the PSVR that you could unplug it, and you wouldn't look as good, but you could still play something, kind of thing. And that was a kind of a long shot, pie in the sky, brainstorm thing. I think, if Sony is going for hyper powerful, it's going to have a cord on it. Like that's just how it is right now.
But I guess my point is, like, I don't think that they should go for hyper powerful. I think they should go for what people want to play and what is most functional and practical. I don't think that there's a practical way to come at a headset that is by definition tied to a console. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I think PlayStation VR is going to be this. Like, unless someday down the road, PlayStation VR 3, Sony decides is going to be a self-contained unit that does not require you to own a PS6. Like, then you're talking. Then you're cooking with gas. But this one, I think, is trapped as a peripheral for the PS5. And you're right, that is a detriment to it, but I don't think there's another option for them right now. Video streaming is getting to a point where it's almost there. And I wonder if 3-4 years from now, when the PS5 needs that kick in the pants to get people kind of reinvigorate the interest in it when it's just, kind of waning, if that's not the right time to release PlayStation VR 2 to kind of get people excited about it again. And then if you can stream it, then you can build everything into everyone's library through PlayStation Plus and everything else. I don't think streaming's ever going to be that good. You don't think?
No. You're up once again, much like with the streaming services, you're up against the speed of light,
but it's still local. I mean, it's just basically
it is still local, but split seconds matter in VR in terms of the experience and the nausea.
Oh, I know that better than anyone, for sure.
Yeah. And you could maybe do it with like some kind of like predicted. I just don't see how you do it without like ending up a few milliseconds too slow to make it a convincing thing. The hardware has to be in the headset if you take the cords away. And maybe they will do that. Maybe there will be a PlayStation 2.5 kind of thing that has, if Oculus Quest continues to sell the way it does and other headsets don't, in comparison, then the only X factor is the fact that the Oculus is freestanding. So the logical thing there would be that everybody else has to sort of pivot to that. So Sony might do that later in the generation, like what you're talking about. I think and look, as someone who bought the launch PSVR, I kind of learned not to do that this time with PlayStation VR, because I'm still stuck with that fucking thing that can't do HDR through its breaker box thing.
Yep.
So I'm probably wait and see on this one, depending on how much it costs.
I'm not buying it at launch. No way. No. PlayStation VR, I feel more burnt by that than anything. Followed closely by PlayStation Vita, to be perfectly honest with you. Yeah. 2 pieces of PlayStation hardware are what has burned me the most out of probably the last 15 or 20 years of my life in gaming, to be perfectly honest with you. I use them the least, the Vita and PlayStation VR. And again, I've said it a million times, I regret recommending it to our audience. I don't know how I can make amends for that other than to not recommend PlayStation VR 2. I think especially by the time it is ready to come out, corded VR is going to seem like a dinosaur. I don't see the play here. I just don't think Sony should release it at all until it's ready to do an untethered headset. I just think it
never will be. That's the thing. It's just like either that or you don't. It's either this or PlayStation gets out of VR.
Or it just has a standalone VR headset that plays its software.
Right, but it's not compatible with their strategy right now.
I'm saying, right.
Yeah, but what you're talking about is going to be next gen.
So in 6 years.
something like that. Yeah, maybe the end of this gen, or like the PlayStation VR 3. That well, that's the other thing is like you can launch if a wireless headset becomes the gold standard, and I don't see any reason to think it won't. You can release that whenever you want. You don't have to wait for the PlayStation 6.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying.
It sucks to be a PSVR 2 owner, but
PlayStation VR and start working on their wireless headset. Because what they have...
Sony's big enough to do both, though.
It is. But the other thing is, what they have that these other guys don't have is software development, the studios, the content, the IP, the worlds that people want to interact with. It has a huge advantage in everything but the hardware. So fix it. Make a piece of hardware that makes sense in 2022 or 2023 or whatever. Right now, I mean, we're probably looking at PlayStation VR 2 launching, best case scenario, holidays 2022 is my guess. Mm-hmm. By then, it's going to seem so archaic. Like, I think it's a huge mistake. I know they've already sunk a ton of R&D into this, and there's a lot of money in it already. I just don't think they're ever going to get their money back. I just can't see anybody. Because the other thing, too, Matt, is that Quest is so cheap. It only costs a few $100s. Like, would you tell somebody to buy PlayStation VR 2 instead of Quest?
No, I mean, I would have to have, like, some kind of game that cannot be...
total killer app.
Replicated. Right. Yeah, just, like, I don't know what that would be.
Legit killer app. Like
something
Super
that makes
Mario
like
64 level killer app.
Yeah, like the Mario 64 of VR,
right.
Basically.
Otherwise, hell no. I'm telling them to get a Quest. So,
or I'm telling them to get nothing.
Right. Yeah.
Like, just like you ain't really missing a whole lot.
Yeah, not yet.
As someone who has thrown more than $1,000 at VR, it has not panned out in any appreciable way to me.
Yep.
So.
All right, let's move on. That's all the information we have on it right now, and I'm guessing we don't get any more information on PlayStation VR 2 for a long, long time.
Yeah, maybe the state of play around this time next year.
Maybe.
If that.
I would be surprised. I'll put it to you that way. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about Bravely Default 2. It's the big release for this week, I guess. We're going to talk about another Switch game here in a little bit that really is the big release of this window that we're sitting in right now. But the big release of the week is undoubtedly Bravely Default 2. It is a Nintendo Switch exclusive. It's the sequel to the 3DS game Bravely Default. Matt, have you been able to spend a good bit of time with this?
Some, yeah.
Like
I've at least played it long enough to catch up to where the demo was.
Oh, okay. I didn't get to play the demo, actually.
The demo was basically the desert area after the prologue ends.
Okay.
So it's like 5 or 6 hours in, I guess, if you're playing slow. I ended up doing a lot of open world wandering and grinding unintentionally because it's mindless and fun. Yeah, so it is standalone, oddly enough. Like, it's not, I mean, it's called Bravely Default 2, but Bravely Default sequel was called Bravely Second.
Right.
And continued that. Bravely Default 2 has similar game mechanics, but is a separate story.
Plot and characters.
So if you've never played Bravely Default, don't worry about not understanding Bravely Default 2. It doesn't seem to be related so far.
Yeah.
And this game is a JRPG.
It sure is.
It is its picture could be in the dictionary next to the term JRPG. It is it's interesting in that like the battle system has stuff going on. Like the battle system is an interesting risk reward element, which is kind of the same as it was on the DS.
I'll say this: I have not gotten far enough into it where I've dealt with the risk part. It's
basically like the way it works, the way the Brave
easy so far. What I've played,
it is very easy. It gets much harder as you start running into enemies with larger groups and more varied elemental weaknesses and strengths and immunities and abilities to buff each other. Like it gets in there. And like basically the way it works is it's pretty standard turn-based JRPG combat, except hit points, magic points, attack, magic, etc. The difference is there's a system called Brave and Default.
Yep. And
what default is basically defense. And when you play defense for a turn, you build up a meter that will give you brave basically brave uses. So you can have up to 3 brave uses stacked. And what brave is, it's an extra move during your turn.
Yeah.
So you can use brave up to 3 times in a turn. And so you can attack or do 4 things in one turn with a character.
Yep.
And the risk reward part is you can go into brave debt if you want to. So you usually start a battle. If you don't hit someone with your sword in the overmap, if you hit them with a sword, you start with 1 brave for every character. If you don't, you start at 0. Yep. So theoretically, if you have 0, you can go into 3 levels of brave debt to do a 4-move turn.
Yep.
And then if you don't kill the enemies with it, your character can't move for 3 turns. Like they just have to sit there and rebuild back up to 0. So you can like make the big bet that you can kill this thing if everybody goes in like brave debt to unload everything they got. But if you're wrong, you got to sit there and get shit on for 4 turns, basically. So that's the risk reward element, is like, are you confident that you can beat this thing, or that you can survive a couple of turns without being able to move in exchange for taking out a dangerous enemy?
Yeah, in the early going, you can just unload and kill everything.
Oh,
you have like this character that joins your party.
There were stretches where I didn't get hit for like 20 battles. You know, it was just like there's nothing. Yeah. Once you get past like the second area, you start running things where it's like, oh, you can't beat these guys without making some brave bets with certain characters, and then you have to use the other characters to keep them alive.
And then the default is you blocking and basically regaining that turn. Yeah,
and I will also give you the hint that if the enemies default, because they can do it too, they can do the build up and multiple turn thing too. If the enemies default, you default.
Yeah, because they're going to kill you.
Ain't no reason to try and attack them, because you're not going to do enough damage, and then they're going to get 3 turns on you, and being in default mode really, really lowers the damage you take.
Yeah, and if you're fighting a boss in particular in this game, and they default like 3 times or whatever, they end up like killing your whole party in 1 turn.
Yeah, you better be throwing up the shell moves or whatever. Whatever you need to do to throw defense up. You really got to dig into that eventually. It becomes a thing where like, sometimes depending where you are, but like there's points where it's like, oh, that random overworld fight almost killed my entire party because I made one wrong choice.
Oh, and you can run into enemies in the overworld that'll just wipe your ass out. Most of them don't, but every once in a while, and they will. So Matt was saying earlier, like you can get an advantage by slashing them with your sword, like when they're not facing. But sometimes they just rush at you, and there's no way you can get away from them or get out of the way or run away. And sometimes
it's also one of those games where it matters if you hit them from behind, or if they catch you from behind. Yep.
And sometimes they'll just get hit by an enemy and they just wipe you out. Like every once in a while, you'll just run into like an enemy in the overworld that's just like 3 times your power and it just destroys you.
Yeah, or even just weird things where like I ran into a group that I hadn't fought that type of enemy before early in the game, and they could heal.
Yep.
And they didn't do much damage, but they could heal them each other faster than I could hurt them.
And the fight just drags on
and
forever.
They dragged on and on and on, and finally they just like whittled me down and killed me.
You do have this guy in your party who you can't control, at least in the early going. I've only played maybe 6 hours of this, something like that.
Sloan is there.
Yeah, Sir Sloan.
You do have companions pretty often that you can't
And he
control.
like kicks ass. Like he saves my ass a lot.
Yeah, he's basically the tutorial.
He saves your ass because he can literally deal like 1,000 damage when you're dealing like 80 damage. And he
deals huge damage. He can heal you. He can resurrect you if a character dies.
He sands down a lot of the rough spots in this game.
Yeah.
We should talk about the story, though, because obviously this is an RPG, and for a lot of people, that's what compels them to keep playing. And I would argue in this RPG, you need it to keep playing because it is really grindy. You fight the same enemies over and over again, and it does get really repetitive. And the story is you're shipwrecked. People find you on the shore. They take you to this town. They heal you up. You discover that there's this princess or queen that's in town who has to...
Princess.
It's a princess who's trying to recover these magical stones, and they find out that you are actually kind of imbued with this stone, so you guys party up, and off you go to try to capture these stones. And I haven't made it any further than that in the plot, so I don't know if anything happens beyond that, but it's a pretty generic fantasy setup for a JRPG.
It is, there's moments where you're like, wait, it's a good thing Square did this because otherwise they'd be sued.
Yeah, exactly. And the story, I mean, it's not a motivating factor for me to keep playing. And the way that
it
told,
is a JRPG in the most. I mean, it's not like it's badly told or performed, but there's no hook beyond. Do you want to play a game in a fantasy world where you play turn-based combat against people with magic and swords? Because here you are.
Some of the voice acting's pretty bad.
Voice acting is pretty funny. Like everyone's doing a different accent for no reason.
There's like an Australian guy who likes to drink.
There's an Australian guy early on. There's a French woman. The princess you team up with is very posh British.
Yep.
The black mage you meet is like a really thick Scottish accent.
He's Scottish. I was saying he's Australian. He's Scottish. And he's like an alcoholic.
The blonde asshole boss is Australian. Like, so I thought you were talking about him.
Right. Yeah.
But every imagine, and of course your main character is American.
Yep.
I have a theory that your main character is not only he was shipwrecked and all this. I have a theory your main character is not from this world.
Yeah,
it's gonna be revealed that he's like from reality. Oh, he's like from our world or something, and he was a sailor on a British ship or something. I don't know.
He was on like a cruise ship or something. And he fell overboard.
Like, because early on,
hit his head on a log.
Very first scenes with him, he's like looking around like, what is this? This isn't normal. I don't recognize any of this shit.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if like, are you not from this crazy fantasy world? Are you from some other medieval time? And you're just like, I don't know.
And the way the story's told,
I don't know what else is out here.
It's like the character models just kind of congregate in front of this blurred out backdrop and they just talk. Like there really aren't. There's a couple cinematics, kind of, but they're not really like. Yeah,
there's not a lot of.
The presentation in this game is really bare bones, like even more bare bones than like an indie game. Like,
well, it's like a anime JRPG.
Yeah, I drafted this in my fantasy league, and I remember after the draft was over, I was like, I really regret Bravely Default 2 because like it's really not that good to look at. It looks like a 3DS game running in like 1080p, and like. Now that I've played the game, that's pretty much what it is. Like, they've obviously redone character models and whatnot.
The funny thing about it, though, is that, like, the enemies are really well done.
They are, yeah.
And the main characters are sort of bleh. Mm-hmm. And, like, it seems to be an intentional choice because that is traditionally how, like, all those old sprite-based RPGs work, too. Like, the heroes were really sort of, like, somewhat bland or simple sprites, and the enemies were, like, really, like, elaborate works of art.
Yeah.
And like they seem to be sort of doing the same thing here. I'm not sure that works as well in 3D.
Yeah.
Like it just feels jarring in places.
It's like the combat, you're right, it does so far I haven't really got to experience much of the risk part of it, but conceivably it does have like a good risk reward system, but otherwise it's very generic. And like eventually you build up enough where you can pull off this like finishing move that's really not like all that elaborate.
Yeah, it actually doesn't do all. I mean, if you can get it so everybody gets to pull it off, it's okay. But like generally, it's not the screen clearer you might be hoping for.
It's not very powerful, and it doesn't even look that impressive. It's just this really crappy animation. Like I don't know. To me, this game it's a handheld game, and so if you play your Switch as a handheld mostly. You maybe look at games
like this.
Which
apparently most people do.
Which apparently they do. Maybe you look at games like this differently than I do, but to me this is not like even like a AA console game to me. I don't know.
I don't dislike it, and I have to admit like the generic JRPG-ness of it is almost refreshing to me.
Okay.
Because it's so back to basics.
It is, yeah.
That it's sort of like, oh, there's no weird like gimmick. There's no strange, stupid system. I don't have to cook food for anybody. Like it's just like it's just a fucking RPG.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of digging that.
I always compare games like this to like Persona 5. Like Persona 5 wipes the mat with this game. Like
yeah, but I don't want to play Persona 5. Like I played Persona 5 and I was bored out of my skull in a different way. Yeah. So like I haven't played Persona 5 Royal Edition either because I have no interest in putting myself through that again.
Well, yeah,
I enjoyed Persona 5 at the time, but the game's too goddamn long.
So I'm good, but I did play it 100 and some hours, and I've played this one like a handful of hours, and I'm struggling to keep playing.
I think part of the appeal of this game is going to come down to how old school are you in the JRPG world.
And like, I am old school.
You played 100 some hours of Phantasy Star 2, you might get more out of this than someone who was born 10 years after that came out.
Yeah.
or if you played a lot of JRPG stuff or the original Bravely games on DS, like you know what you're getting into here, because it is. I mean, I would be very surprised if this game didn't start as a 3DS game.
No, I'm pretty sure it did. Yeah, absolutely.
And I do like a lot of the environment art. I think it's really cool when you click the right stick and you can see the whole town you're in. That's really it looks really pretty.
Some of the art's pretty good. I'd agree with that.
It's weirdly uneven in that regard, but it isn't like nothing you're saying about it's wrong. There's something really like meat and potatoes about it that has been appealing to me. It might just be the time period we're in right now. I don't know.
Maybe.
Just something that doesn't make me learn a bunch of extraneous crap, and I know what it wants, and I know what we're doing, and I know we need to find the 3 fucking crystals, and I know that what magic points are, and I know how to heal people, and I know that you're okay. Now we're in the desert area, now we're in the water crystal, now we're in it's like comfort food. It's like there's nothing special about it, but it does it all pretty well.
It does
enough. It's not a triple A, it's not a double A. It's kind of an A.
Yeah.
It's like kind of a B plus A minus in there.
I mean, I feel like I've played indie turn-based RPGs that are as good as this one, though.
Somewhat, but indie games a lot of times feel like they have to put a spin on it.
Yeah, that's true.
This
is very straightforward.
This one just doesn't.
Well, you can't see the lower third, but the lower third for this is not brave enough. That's my opinion.
It's not trying anything risky or special.
Yeah.
But sometimes that works. I don't know if it works for the amount of money they're charging. But like if you are ready for a, no frills JRPG with a pretty interesting battle system once it gets going about 10 hours in, like you could do worse right now.
And it seems like it's a pretty big game, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's no. I mean, look, if you don't have any RPGs to play on the Switch right now, and you just got a Switch or something, I'm going to tell you to buy Xenoblade.
Yeah, sure. Yep,
if you've already done the Xenoblades and you don't have anything else to play in that realm, you could do a lot worse than to try this one. And the demo lasts 5 hours, so if you can play the demos and see how you feel about it and decide that way. Because the demo is a very good vertical slice of what you're going to be doing the whole time.
Yeah, and I have other issues too, like because of the camera, the way it's pulled out, and like the set camera angles, and you can't move it. Like moving around, like the hub town is hard to like figure out like how to run down a stairway. Like you run into like the walls, or lining up with someone to like talk to them is hard. I actually didn't play this in handheld mode. I probably should have. But I
didn't either. You know, I didn't.
I know you didn't, which is why I should have, because I know you won't. I could see, because like the characters in some cases are really small on screen, where you couldn't maybe see like which direction an enemy is facing. And
well, it's funny because like I didn't realize until like probably the third or fourth time I'd gone back to the town to like you go out and do the quest, come back.
Yeah.
I didn't realize until like the third or fourth time I did that when you are in the town, your party members are also standing around in town and you can talk to them.
Yeah.
Because the characters are so small, I didn't recognize them.
And you can't see them. Yeah, it's hard to see.
Yeah.
And there's like pathways in the town that like I didn't even realize I could go down at
first.
first.
A little hidden way.
And you have to like kind of jimmy your way to get down the stairs, because
Yeah, it's like playing something. It's like playing pre-rendered backgrounds again.
Yeah.
It's not pleasant.
Yeah. But you're right. I mean, if you're looking for a straightforward JRPG that you can grind along at for a while that has a fairly interesting combat system, I think it's a decent choice. I would not pay full price for it, though, personally.
Yeah, I don't mind that I paid full price for it, but again, like I said, I played the demo and I knew what I was getting into.
Yep.
And that's what I would recommend is go download the demo. Go play the demo. And if you like it, buy it.
And between that and GameFace, you're going to know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, there is no deceit here in Bravely Default 2, I don't think.
Yep.
Just either like simple appeal or weird disappointment.
All right, with that, we're going to move on. We're going to talk about BlizzCon.
You can use that on the box, Square.
We're going to talk about
weird disappointment, GameFace.
GameFace. Yeah, and with that, we're going to talk about BlizzConline, which was this year's BlizzCon.
Weird disappointments.
Were you disappointed in BlizzCon this year?
I didn't have a lot of reaction to it. No.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the same. One thing I will say,
to be disappointed, I would have had to have expectations.
I'm right there with you, actually. One thing I will say is that I've picked up on with Blizzard over the years is that Blizzard's fans care about like really simple stuff. Like Blizzard can just show a trailer for a new character in Diablo, and that's enough to bring the house down. Like, to me, I'm like, that's it? You're just going to show the rogue? And that's all you got to do?
You're going to show a rogue and say 2022 and we're all going to freak out? Like,
and then you go online and you realize they were right. That's all they had to do was show the rogue and announce 2022. Like,
that's true.
And I will say this, like, the trailer is really good, like, for the rogue. It's like, it's really good.
Yeah, it looks really cool. It's so far away that I don't know why I'm thinking about it yet. You know?
Yeah, it's gross in all the right ways and clever, and
it definitely looks more like Diablo than Diablo 3 did early on. I see where they're going with it. I mean, I had no problem with how Diablo 3 looked. I was not one of the people that was freaking out about the fact there was color in a Diablo game.
Now the
but
rogue
Diablo
was
4
not in 2, correct? It was in 1 and 3. Is that right? I can't remember.
I can't remember.
I know it hasn't been in all of them, and that's the reason why people were really
I think it was the
about
Amazon in 2.
Yeah, right.
The Boazon.
Yeah, that's right. And so I can see why people would think it's a big deal. The other thing about the Rogue, too, is that it's good at both like up close and
you can build
combat.
the Rogue. You can build the Rogue in a couple different ways.
It's very flexible in how you can play the character. And in the midst of this crazy cinematic trailer, they also show tons of gameplay of how it plays. And I will say this, there were many times in that gameplay where I'm like, oh, you're screwed. And then, nope. The Rogue can pull it out. And I appreciated that about it. But still, it's like when you get so little from Blizzard throughout the year about their unreleased projects, and this is what you get, it's a little disappointing to a non-rabid fan. Like, I love Blizzard. I respect the hell out of them. But I'm not like psycho Blizzard fan. And so to me, this was kind of a disappointment. I get fans are really excited for it, and they're stoked on it, and they thought that was more than enough and more than good enough. But for me, especially if the game really is coming out in 2022, as Blizzard seems to be hinting at, it seemed a little disappointing to me. The bigger thing to me was that they are remaking Diablo 2. And
which we knew.
Yeah, but they showed it for the first time. Diablo 2 Resurrected.
They also proving that they did actually take it away from the Warcraft 3 guys.
Yeah.
And handed it over to Vicarious, I think it was.
Yeah. But it looks pretty damn good.
It does.
I was pleasantly surprised by it.
I mean, look, if you're going to screw one up and get one right, I'd rather you screw up Warcraft 3 and get Diablo 2 right.
Yeah. So. And there was no real big stink over Diablo Immortal either this time, because I think they gave people stuff that they wanted this time.
Yeah, there were other things to be absorbed by as opposed to Diablo Immortal. And it's been so long since anyone bothered talking about Diablo Immortal, maybe we forgot we hated it.
China won't hate it though. China will love it.
Oh yeah, it'll do its job.
It's going to do very well. I think.
Diablo 2 is the star of this show for me, just because I like Diablo 2 so much. I will definitely play that when it comes out.
And the cool thing about it, too, is they're not ditching classic Diablo 2 either.
No.
It's going to stay up, stay alive,
no,
remain its own
definitely
product.
learn from their mistakes in Warcraft 3.
Yep, absolutely. And that's what you hope for, is that you learn from the past mistakes.
I was a little shocked at how little they talked about Overwatch.
Yeah, well, they actually did talk about Overwatch 2 a lot.
They got around to Overwatch 2 eventually, but like in the initial presentation, I was kind of shocked that there was no Overwatch really mentioned.
Well, the developer doc that they put out was like 30 minutes long, and unfortunately, because of that, like I did not gather B-roll for it, because you'd have to go through that 30-minute presentation and like chop out all the talking head. It would have been like a nightmare to try to get B-roll ready for it, and I just ran out of time, to be honest with you. But they did talk a lot about Overwatch 2. The problem, though, at least I think, is that I can't tell the difference between Overwatch 1 and Overwatch 2.
Like at one point they showed the I can't remember their names anymore. The cowboy guy.
Yeah, I don't know his name either.
You remember that? They showed his like new design, and I'm like, that's the same picture. Like I can't tell. McCree or something. I can't remember his fucking name.
Yeah.
But I was like, that's, I mean, maybe his like poncho is a little different. Look, maybe I haven't stared at these characters for thousands of hours, like people who have played Overwatch as much as other people have, but like, okay, like they got different clothes, like
that's all. What? And then they're like, we got a couple maps. Here's like Paris and New York City, and I'm like, okay, like the game doesn't look any better than Overwatch to me.
No, and like the nature of how they're doing that upgrade kind of demands that, I guess. But it's just like,
yeah, they're gonna make people buy it all over again.
Yeah, and it's just like I mean, it's not like I follow the scene very closely, but it's like, am I wrong that like this thing has like contracted in a way that's really kind of frightening? Like it used to be the Overwatch League was a big deal and all this, Blizzard was pushing all the time, and it was like, and I just don't hear about it anymore.
Yeah, it's because we're insulated and isolated from the esports scene. Really, like I don't really follow it either. But there's stuff going on. Like for 3-night weekend, there's almost always like an Overwatch tournament going on somewhere during the weekend, but. With COVID and everything, it's like everything's just kind of more subdued now, particularly these live events, because you don't have the big crowds anymore. That's kind of what sells esports, is having that like 40,000 seat crowd and people roaring. And like now it's just people sitting at home with like their snowball mics. And
that's like how like the Wednesday night fights used to be like the big local weekly fighting game scene here. And now it's just like Alex Valle playing like
on
Street
Twitch.
Fighter Alpha 2, like, and commentating on it, like, from his house. And it's
esports have really suffered through the pandemic. I mean, as far as revenue generation, too, they make a lot of their money off of tickets.
I will say this, though. In Wednesday Night Fight Street Fighter 5 this past week, some mystery Ryu player showed up and swept the night's tournament, and everyone's like, "Who's the Mr. Ryu player?" And everyone's like, "We know the Mr. Ryu," but they're trying to turn it into kind of like a wrestling thing. Where it's
that's kind of cool.
It's like who is it? Who is this mysterious Ryu player that's so good? Because everyone's online, so you don't see anybody, right?
They're trying to create a narrative around it.
They're using the drawback to create something, and I think that's pretty cool.
That is cool.
It's definitely Daigo, though.
Yeah. I think that has hurt Overwatch, the esports kind of just being crushed through the pandemic. But more than anything, like just looking at Overwatch 2, like I could never tell the difference. Like you could put footage of Overwatch, that's the stuff that's live now, and show me what they showed in that Overwatch 2 presentation, and I would not be able to tell the difference. The game looks the same. So,
like, I'm sure that like someone who's a really hardcore Overwatch person could, it was this, but it's like me telling you the difference between two third-party transformers of the same character. It's like no one cares but me. Like it's not gonna. It doesn't.
And
you
look,
can't tell.
Truth be told, the Overwatch audience is big enough that's fine. Like there's 20 million people who are going to be able to tell the difference. If you're trying to get somebody like me who didn't get hooked on Overwatch 1 into Overwatch 2, what I saw is not going to do it. Bottom line, it's just not. Mm-hmm. It looks like the same game to me with a few new maps and maybe some new weapons, and a couple
maybe
characters.
They just don't care.
Yeah. So it is what it is. That's where we're at. And then the final thing that they announced was Blizzard Arcade Collection, which I had really completely forgot that Blizzard had done arcade games, to be perfectly honest with you. And then when they showed the arcade collection, which actually like some of our old colleagues are working on this or worked on this. Mm-hmm. I think it's out already.
I think it came out that day.
Like that day, yeah. So some of our old journalist friends are worked on this and like put this together. I had really forgotten that Blizzard did arcade games, and then I saw like the collection, and I was like, well, now I know why I forgot, because they're not like
I mean they're the old action games and things. Lost Vikings is a good game.
Yep. That's the one.
Some of those games are good. I look at them and like, oh yeah, I remember those. Those are good. I don't want to play them again.
Yeah.
But like I acknowledge them. As being things I liked in back in the day.
Yep, but at least Blizzard isn't letting the stuff die and just wither and disappear. It's trying to keep that stuff relevant. Do I think we'll ever get updated versions of this stuff? And this is like a hint at that? No. I don't think we're never going to see new versions of these IPs.
No,
but
if you haven't played Blackthorn, it's kind of fun.
Yep,
it's pretty good.
But really, that's the big stories from BlizzConline 2021. Probably next year they'll have a real BlizzCon. At least I'm hoping that'll be the case.
Most likely.
And maybe that'll be the glorious debut of Diablo 4. Maybe they'll release it at BlizzCon, and they'll actually have to show more of the game than just a class. But I think for Blizzard fans, that was probably a pretty good BlizzCon. What do you think?
I mean, considering the situation we're in, I think it delivered pretty well. Nothing earth-shattering, but I don't think anyone expected it to be.
Nothing missing either. I mean, other than the fact that Overwatch 2
You got something
wasn't
for
really a part of
Warcraft.
the
You
main
got something
show.
for Diablo. You got something for Overwatch. Like, what else do you want?
Yep.
Like they hit all their big pillars, and nobody. I don't think anybody really felt left out.
Yep.
So mission accomplished.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, let's move on. We're going to move on to a leak, and a big leak. Matt, for you, maybe one of the biggest leaks that we've had in the last couple of years this week, and I'm very nervous to show this footage for obvious reasons, because right now the footage is up on YouTube and it hasn't been taken down and it hasn't been blacklisted. But I have a feeling that maybe by this time tomorrow, when we're trying to publish this show, that it might be. And that is the first real footage of Elden Ring. Well, it's leaked, and it's crazy because it wasn't just like one leak. It was like 2 different people leaked it.
Yeah, it kind of came from multiple sources. It was weird. Apparently, this is footage from like a build that's like a year old.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I hope so, because it doesn't look that great. And look, I get it. I'm not showing it right now. This is actually the real trailer. I think I'm going to show the footage to you guys, though. I think I'm going to do it. This is the legit trailer that they put out that's okay to run. And look, I get that the leak is blurry and shot off screen in 720p, but it still doesn't look that good to me. Technically, the visuals don't. What do you think?
I mean, it looks fine. I will admit, I don't expect cutting edge visuals from Software.
Me either. I mean, I definitely have lower expectations from.
Design, the design is here. You can show me a lot of this footage, and I'll be like, oh, that's from. You can tell. There's the things dragging the cart with the spears through their chests, and it's
that
very
reminded me a little
Software.
bit of Attack on Titan.
Yeah, there's some of that there. Yeah. The scale of it also reminds me of Attack on Titan a little bit.
And even the enemy designs a little bit with the wide mouths and the teeth.
Yeah. It's I'm not here to be wowed by visuals from game. I want the gameplay. The Demon Souls remake notwithstanding, obviously it was nice that was one of the best looking games ever made. I'm more interested in seeing this game. It's okay, so it seems to be an open world thing, riding a horse around.
You're riding a horse. That's a huge
very
deal,
poor
man.
animation.
And here we go. I'm going to show it right now. I'll probably regret this, but it's going to create a lot of extra work.
Yeah, it's. I'm interested. They're trying a new thing.
They are.
I support that. We'll see if they pull it off.
It does kind of look like an amalgamation of a lot of their games, because I can see a little bit of
does.
Sekiro in there. I can definitely see some Dark Souls in there.
There's Dark Souls. There's some Bloodborne. There's even some Kingsfield.
A field. So there's that one shot where the mage is standing in a field, and you can see for 2 miles. That's a big deal for a From Software game.
Yeah.
A really big deal. I mean, that's one of the things that people either think I think like or dislike about it, is how claustrophobic From's games generally are.
Mm-hmm.
You rarely get into an area where you can see further than 200 yards.
Well, also because the one of the hallmarks of these games tends to be the level design and the world design kind
wraps
of
around on itself,
curves back on itself. And there's I know there's a lot of people I know who are Souls fans who are how can they possibly replicate that feeling in an open world? And it's a valid question. I don't think we know the answer to that yet.
Yep.
Or if they're even going to try it. I mean, my guess would be the open world will be open world, and you will find smaller sort of like Arkham City. You'll have a big open place, and you'll go into a thing, and that's where you'll get your little, your interconnected labyrinth, and then you'll leave that interconnected labyrinth and go to a next one.
Kind of how we hoped Breath of the Wild was.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
Right.
And we're hoping Breath of the Wild 2 will be like that.
Yeah, I mean, Breath of the Wild with actual dungeons remains a holy grail, and whoever can deliver that to me first
will win my money.
At this point, feels like it might be more Breath of the Wild too. Elden Ring is in this weird limbo space that you got to wonder when this thing's coming.
It looks like this was shown to buyers or investors or something.
Yeah, it definitely was shown to people outside the company for something.
And that was a huge mistake.
apparently.
And somebody left the room with the video where somebody could play it, and they recorded it with their cell phone. It's just so funny how one little mistake like that, to the person who was supposed to handle that room, had no idea what a big deal it was. They're just like, oh, I'm going to go oh, you want a water or something? I'll go get some water for you. And while they're gone, someone's like, click, 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 and they're turning on their phone and like, oh my God, I'm going to have the first real footage of Elden Ring. And they did. And I don't know how they got it out without getting caught. There's watermark. You can tell that, Bandai Namco was like, oh, we got to protect the crap out of this. There was watermarks all over.
Oh, yeah, they were definitely on guard.
I've never seen footage with this many watermarks on it. It's crazy.
Yeah, just the confidential.
Over and over.
Everywhere.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Somebody had a lot of balls to grab this and put it out and hope that they'd get tracked back to them, because you would think it wouldn't be that hard. You probably had a group of 50 people that got to see this or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it also appears that there's platforming, more platforming in this than prior.
Yeah, jumping around on the ledges and stuff. Yeah.
Which I don't know if that's a good idea.
I mean, it's never been their strong suit, really. Nope. But I don't, they're trying something new. They're trying to do some unexpected stuff there. We'll see if it turns out. I like what I see.
I like the tone and the mood of it and the art and stuff like that, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always liked that about From's games.
Right.
Always. It's what drives me crazy. It's
it's that stamina bar that's the problem.
I love everything about their games except for just the stamina bar and just the difficulty curve. Again, I would love to play through Demon Souls. I've been watching people play.
Well, there was other leaked footage that I didn't see it, but there were those leaked footage that people thought they saw difficulty selection.
Really? That would be huge for me.
That was a big, and there was a lot of complaining about that, of course, because there's that faction of Souls fans that thinks if you can't hack it, you don't deserve to play it, which is stupid.
It really is dumb. They should want From to make as much money as
easy
possible.
modes, and I have never seen that easy mode because I don't play on easy mode. That's all you got to do. Don't play on easy mode. Who gives a shit if someone else sees the end of the game and you didn't?
I could go on YouTube and watch it if I want to. Let me play it. I want to play Demon Souls, but I played it for 5 or 6 hours. I'm over this, and now I watch people play it on YouTube. Let me play it. Let me give you money. Let me buy your games. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm always excited about From's games by looking at the trailers and everything. I'm always like, man, maybe this is the one, and then it never is. But maybe this is the one. Are you more excited or less excited for it now that you've seen it?
I mean, more in the sense that it exists. It's just
it's actually playable and a thing.
Yeah, it's a thing. I mean, it's one of those things I just sort of pushed into the back of my mind. Well, one day, maybe they'll show a trailer for it, and that'll be that. It's I filed it under book 6 of Song of Ice and Fire with things I figured would never happen. So.
Well, From Software actually gets shit done, so we're actually going to get to play this, I think.
It's tainted by the George R. R. Martin delay curse, because he did work on the World Bible, I guess.
Yeah.
But clearly they're further along than, I don't know, maybe they're not. I don't know. Supposedly he's got hundreds of pages. He's halfway done with book 6. We'll see if that ever happens.
Well, I'm more excited for Elden Ring.
We've been inside for a year. What have you been doing?
I know. What can you be doing? Yeah. You should be writing. That's all you should be doing. I'm more excited for Elden Ring now that I've seen it. I don't think it looks that good technically, but I think it looks awesome still. So
also, I mean, if that build is as old as people are saying, it could substantially improve by the time it comes out next year or whenever. But yeah, I'm still glad I didn't put it on the fantasy draft.
Yeah, it's not coming out this year. I guarantee you that. All right, let's move on. We're running out of time, and our last topic on today's show is the antithesis of From Software, and that is Mario. Super Mario 3D World just came out for Switch, and it's not just Super Mario 3D World. There's actually tweaks and changes to that, but in addition to that, there's a big chunk, well, not big, there's a chunk of new content that is kind of cordoned away called Bowser's Fury. And what I would say is that don't buy it just for Bowser's Fury.
No, you better like the main game.
Yeah. And I'll say this, I am not the world's biggest Super Mario 3D World fan. I know to some people that's sacrilege. Some people love it because they feel like it's the perfect combo of 3D Mario and 2D Mario. I am a much bigger 3D Mario fan than 2D Mario fan. And so Super Mario 3D World was like, wait, I want a real 3D platformer for Wii U, and I never got it. Like, they never really came out with one.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, it was like this kind of half step. And I still enjoyed it. And it's a brilliant game. It's a Mario game. They're all brilliant. They always have their flashes and moments that just blow you away. But I did not get addicted to 3D World like I do to most Mario 3D games. I'll just put it to you that way.
Mm-hmm.
It is good, and I appreciate that some people really like it. It just wasn't my forte.
Yeah,
However,
I mean, I like it. I pretty much agree with that. I do like it. The focus on cats is appealing to me. But yeah, I mean, you're right. I know there are people that say it's like the greatest, game of its. It's fine. I like it. I was glad to buy it again, even if it didn't have Bowser's Fury with it. I probably would have bought it because I don't have it on Wii U.
Oh,
I've only played it elsewhere. So
gotcha.
I was glad to finally have it. And again, like I've said, everything that was exclusive to Wii U should move up to the Switch and rescue it from that platform.
Yep.
And we're running out. We need Xenoblade Chronicles X, and that's about it, folks.
Let's be honest. There's not a lot left. Now, one thing I would say is Bowser's Fury is a fully 3D platformer Mario game.
Mm-hmm.
However, there are caveats. So if you're watching the B-roll early on, you're like, Shane, what are you doing? What I was doing was trying to triple jump. And you can't. There's no triple jump in this game. So even in Bowser's Fury, which is fully 3D, they only give you the movement options that you get in 3D World. To me, that is asinine. I understand how they convinced themselves that was a good idea. It was not a good idea. It takes away, to me, so much from a 3D Mario when you can't triple jump. It's just something I do. It's built into how I get around 3D Mario worlds. For them to take that away to me, that is sacrilege. I still can't believe that they did it. Now, all the other stuff that's in there, all the other power-ups that's in 3D World, they're all there in 3D, which is cool, and I do enjoy that. So it's a trade-off, and I kind of get that. But to take away one of the key traversal options in 3D Mario games, just because it doesn't match the game that is tacked onto, and let's be honest, Matt, this is tacked on to 3D World. This has really no correlation to it other than the fact it's on the same card.
Yeah, there's no reason it had to be attached other than the fact that it uses the same power-ups.
Yeah. I mean, and they didn't have to do that either, in all honesty.
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit, I did try to triple jump the first time I moved in the game because I feel like that's pretty instinctual.
Yeah.
And then when I realized I couldn't. At first, I was like, "Wow, the timing must be weird." Like, it did not occur to me until like a minute in that it wasn't there. It wasn't just me doing it wrong.
Oh yeah, I kept trying it for a long time, and then finally, I just Googled it, and I'm like, "What? They took it out?"
I was like, "Oh, I guess it's not there." So, and here's the thing: like, I didn't miss it really after that.
Oh, see, I use it all the time.
Well, because like, there's nowhere to do it. Like,
there is.
This game is so kind of folded in and smaller, because like it's the perspective's down as much. And it's like, more like the normal 3D Mario, but it still is doing kind of these little folded in, precision driven like platforming sections through most of the world.
Well, it's like Water World. It's like all these little like platform sections connected by water. And eventually you get this weird like dinosaur, almost looks like an inflatable that you can use to like get from one patch you can get from one patch of the world to another patch. But other than that big complaint, and that is a big complaint for me because I literally use a triple jump all the time playing 3D Mario. You can see I'm still trying to do it in this B-roll. Still, I haven't given up yet. It is a big part of it for me, but otherwise, it's great. It is amazing. I really have enjoyed Bowser's Fury. It is short. I finished it basically in like 3 hours and like 15 minutes or whatever. I could probably go back and collect everything and get another couple hours out of it. I haven't done that yet. But it is not a huge piece of content.
No, it's a nice bonus though. I like it. I like that it's a little bit of 3D Mario with like adapting to the new 3D World power-ups and like it all kind of hangs together pretty well. I like that, like the big reward when you get enough of the bells is to have a big kaiju fight against Super Mega Bowser or whatever. It's like, it's fun. Like
those fights though eventually get really stupid because they don't really change. And
no, but I like giant things knocking stuff over. So like I'm pretty easy to please in that regard.
And that's the thing. So Mario, Like, Bowser is always in the world. He's, like, the one who's spreading the muck. So there's a little bit of Super Mario Sunshine in this, too, and that there's, like, this gunk that's, like, covering everything. And you have to collect cat shines to basically get the gunk off. And as you go through the game, like, Bowser moves through the overworld, and he'll just pop up at times and, like, start dropping fireballs on you or trying to breathe fire on you. So it's kind of like there's some other game that does something like this. Zelda or Breath of the Wild does something like that, doesn't it? Where there's like this thing where there's just this, like, every once in a while these storms kind of happen and you're like, oh, like scrambling around.
Yeah, like lightning strike, you gotta take the metal armor off and stuff. Yeah.
And there's kind of like the Breath of the Wild vibes in this. I thought the level design in Bowser's Fury was great. And you're right, like, after basically what you do is there are these bells where you need a certain number of cat shines to get the gunk off of them. Once you do that, you ring the bell, and then that's when you fight, like, the gigantic Bowser as, like, a huge cat suit Mario. And you're right, the first time it was awesome. I was like, oh my gosh! And then after that, like, they just became, like, kind of rote and really.
Yeah, I mean, that's Mario bosses in a nutshell.
Yeah.
It's like the first time it's like, oh, that's neat, and then the fifth time you're like, yeah, I got to jump on you 3 times. I got it. Yeah.
Yep. But I had a lot of fun with it. What I would not say, though, I would say this: if you have already played through Super Mario 3D World and you're considering buying this just for Bowser's Fury, I would recommend against that 100%. It literally is like a few hours of content before you finish it off. If you have not played Super Mario 3D World, I don't know what you're waiting for. Go buy this right now.
Also, if you just want like a Switch version that you can play with your friends or your kids or whatever, like it's nice to have it on the Switch. Is really kind of part of the deal,
And look, there are tweaks to Super Mario 3D World as well on this version. The multiplayer stuff is handled a lot better, things like that, and it already is a great game. So it's a great game made better, and then you get an extra handful of hours of true 3D Mario platforming with all the power-ups from 3D World. And one thing I will say is, like, a lot of the power-ups in 3D World have not been in other 3D Mario games. So you are getting sort of access to some stuff that you wouldn't have had access to prior. But it's very polished. It's not.
Yeah, it's a really nice total package.
Yep,
you get a really good Mario game, and you get a really nice bonus.
Yep.
And there's not really a downside to it.
And being able to play, like, with somebody else in a much more reasonable manner, like, even if you play by yourself, like in Bowser Jr. and Bowser's Fury, like, you can set the level of assist that he gives you. You can set it so it's just very simple. I think there's 3 levels. I can't remember.
Yeah, there's help a lot, help a little, don't help at all.
Don't help at all, yeah. And so you can set it to how much help you get. And I set it to, like, help, like, the least amount, just to see what he could do. And he's very smart, and he does actually help a lot. And he'll help you collect stuff, so you don't have to go through a lot of the tedium of going back and grabbing stuff that maybe got busted open in a crate or whatever. But it's a very polished game. It already was a great and polished game to begin with. A lot of people never had a Wii U and probably haven't played the base game before. It is undoubtedly the better version. It's better to play by yourself, and it's better to play with somebody else. And you get this extra handful of hours of content in Bowser's Fury. It all adds up to, if you're someone who didn't own a Wii U and own a Switch, it is a no-brainer. It's one of the best purchases you'll make this year. I guarantee it. For those of you who played it before, I do struggle to tell you to spend another $60 on this. I would honestly just say, well, I guess most people maybe put their Wii U's away. But if you haven't, I would just say play the Wii U version again. And then maybe wait till on down the road.
I think this one looks nicer.
Yeah, it does. It plays faster, too, it seems like.
Yeah. It's definitely no, I don't think you are. I feel like it is a little snappier.
Yeah, it seems like Mario is faster and the enemies.
Because I felt when I played the Wii U. I don't own the Wii U version, but when I played it, I felt like it felt sluggish, and I kind of chalked that up to it being derived from the DS series. But it doesn't feel like that now.
It's way snappier.
I don't know if that's intentional or if it's actually a little faster, but it feels snappier to me.
The only complaint I have, other than removing the triple jump for Bowser's Fury, is that Mario in this game also has that weird white edge around him. Why do they do that?
I don't know.
I hate it. I don't understand why they do it. It's very weird and off-putting. But yeah. Oh, there's the cat. Hold on. We got B-roll running right now. How has the cat settled in now, Matt?
She's okay.
Yeah.
She's pretty happy. My old cat is still growling at her.
Well, your old cat would growl at me after I've been coming to your house every Tuesday for like a year straight.
She's very territorial, so I just keep her in the bedroom now.
Yeah.
I'm over there.
Aw.
Luna.
Meow. Oh, we got a little meow. Yeah, that cat seems to have assimilated very well, which is good.
Yeah.
It's good to see.
Oh.
So anyway, there you go. That's Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. I called it like on 3-Night Weekend, I think I called it Bowser's Inside Story or some crap. And of course, somebody watched that whole show and left a comment, and it wasn't like, hey, the interview was great. I really like 3-Night Weekend. It was like, it's
just
Bowser's Fury. Like, what's wrong with people? Anyway, it's time to do some Q&A. I don't know if some of you guys have got them into the chat already, but we are running out of we made it the full 3 hours, and I didn't die. In fact, I felt great. It felt good to do this. Let me get my reading glasses here so I can read some of your questions. And thanks to everybody. I did see kind of like through my peripheral vision that you guys were all like giving us Switch Prime and giving us bits, and I saw that we hit the train like right away. You guys kept giving us bits, so I really appreciate it. If you want to get a question answered, go at Sifted Games. That way we can see it. And there's a bunch in here already. Here's one from Vincent, and I'm going to answer his question because he has been a lifesaver over the last month. Do you think the next 3D Mario should be a more fleshed out version of the fully open world Bowser's Fury concept instead of, I mean, they were kind of, I felt like with Odyssey, they were inching that direction.
Yeah, Bowser's Fury feels to me like taking a lot of Odyssey's lessons and applying it to this.
And to answer your question, yes, I think the next Mario is going to be a fully open world game. I think this is kind of Nintendo tipping its cap a little bit, tipping its hand a little bit.
Definitely feels like something that started as an experiment and ended up as a dry run.
Yep. And I think they're going to look at the feedback from this, and so far it's been pretty much unanimously positive. And so I feel like, yes, that this is going to be what the next 3D Mario is, and I'm totally cool with it. I like the design of it. I like staying in the world and having some sort of a vehicle, basically, to take me around the world, and they'll have to figure that out, obviously, for the full game. This is just kind of like a little bit of a spin-off. And they'll have to maybe find a better way to do that, and it can't just all be water is another thing, so they may have to have, like, multiple vehicles to get you around. But if they do a good job with the vehicles, and the dinosaur's okay. It's a little loose to control, I feel like. But if they can do well with all the vehicles that they include in the game to make the open world work, then I think it could be something really cool. So, yeah, I think that that's what it's going to be, and I'm totally cool with it if that is the case. Let's see. Next question. Vincent is saying it is faster overall. It's been confirmed. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't just me being crazy. Toast 916X, good to see you live again. It's good to be back, people. To feel good enough to do this feels good. I can't even tell you how tough this month has been, just in so many ways. What's your take on 6 Days in Fallujah coming back? Why? Why is my take? Like, it seems like a cheap publicity stunt to me.
Yeah.
It feels like a small publisher was like, how do we make waves? How do we get people paying attention to us?
How do we get built-in talking point, basically? Like,
how do we make sure that our next project is talked about on a show like GameFace? Here we are. Mm-hmm. It worked. So I think it's cheap. It's dirty. I don't see any reason for it. The game doesn't look that good. The game never looked that good. So, yeah, I think it's pretty dirty.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember, it made me think, I couldn't remember that. Do you remember when, I think we were at Tech TV, probably like right around the time X-Play started or a little bit after, and like someone was trying to start up it was like a gaming service that was going to make first-person shooter levels out of things that happened on the news?
Yes, I do remember that.
I can't remember what it was called.
I remember also they came in around the same time that person came in with that crazy like vest that made it feel like you were being shot.
Yeah, the immersion vest. Yeah.
It may have been like the same day. I think we got the immersion vest demo, and then they came in with like the newsflash shooter. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that. I can't remember what the name of it was.
Yeah, I can't remember.
But you're not imagining it. It was real for sure. Congrim 1, thoughts on Mediatonic being acquired by Epic Games? Wait, I didn't even know that. When did that happen?
I don't know.
Wow. I didn't even know that. So you're getting my raw thoughts on it.
The fall. Yeah, that was this morning.
I was probably prepping for the show and missed it then. Good for them. That's great for them. If it gives them a bigger budget and a bigger team to keep making 3D platformers, I'm all for it. I don't know if Epic will make them make other stuff, but I think that's awesome. I can't think of a better company to be acquired by, to be honest with you. We have lots of friends that work there, and they have nothing but good things to say about Epic. So, and if you
as long as you're not Apple, you probably have good things to say about Epic.
You're all good. Yeah, so I think that's great. I think they'll get a bigger budget on their games, and I think they already have proven they can make great games. So I'm all down with it. Now, if they could just get the Banjo license back, that would be awesome. Fresh from the deli. Good to see you back, Shane. Good to be back, guys. I hope you feel better. Me too. I hope they figure out what the hell's going on with me. Thoughts on Guilty Gear Strive beta? I couldn't play it because you had to pre-order the game to play it. I think the animation
I haven't played it because I haven't pre-ordered it yet, but it does look amazing.
It looks amazing. And he says, I think the animation is best in class. Agree.
Yep.
Rollback netcode is amazing. I wouldn't know, but I'll take your word for it. Soundtrack is great. I could tell that from the trailers. Yep. Really excited to get another big fighting game in such a long time. Agreed. I think it looks awesome. And I'll tell you, I thought it looked awesome because I tried to play the beta. And I start looking around, I'm like searching for Strive beta, Guilty Gear beta, and nothing would come up. And then finally I realized the only way you could get into it is if you pre-order. And I think that's a huge mistake. I think that's the dumbest thing ever. It's like, okay, give it to people who pre-ordered first. Like, maybe give them a weekend. But then the next weekend, give it to everybody else. Like, I want to play it. I want to check it out. A lot of people want to check it out, and I can't. So
it used to be a pretty standard practice, but that was years ago. It feels weird to do it now.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. That's kind of like a thing from the past. Like, people don't do that anymore. So I don't know. I think it's a mistake. They should crack it open, and maybe eventually they will. Maybe they will eventually unlock it for everybody, but as of right now, it's for pre-orders only. I'm glad that you like it, though, and I'm glad to get your report that it's good. Let's see. Tiny2K, thank you for gifting all these subs to everybody. I appreciate it, man, and our audience does as well. Justin Horman, do you have a favorite game made by Japan Studio? Yeah, so they're going away. It makes me so happy to hear you're feeling better and aren't suffering while doing this. Let's see. Where do you start with them? I mean, you can go all the way back to like Ape Escape. I liked all those games, but I think honestly, probably like Hot Shots Golf, I think are my favorite games that they made. And I know Clap Hands made some of those, but I think Japan Studio made a couple of them as well. So I really liked those. I liked all the Ape Escape stuff that they made. And obviously the Astrobot stuff, but that's not going away, which is good to hear.
Yeah, I don't think this is the end of things in the way that people seem to be assuming it is. Like they're killing internal development, but they are still going to be able to function as kind of a sort of pseudo publisher / advisor, which is where you've gotten a lot of their best stuff. Like, you're going to say Japan Studio. The first thing I think of is Shadow of the Colossus. Because their logo's in front of it, but that was Team Eco with support from Japan Studio.
Yep.
So I don't think everything that made Japan Studio's output great is going away. In terms of stuff that like they made that I think of, like I think the Gravity Rush games are intensely underrated.
They are
games like. Sure. Just horribly underappreciated for what they are. And I understand it's a tough sell because it's just so anime looking and it was kind of a niche. Like it's hard to explain why those games work the way they do without getting someone's hands on them. But I think it's a shame that there was not more kind of word of mouth saving the Gravity Rush. It's nice they got to make a sequel. Like the Gravity Rush 2 is probably a minor miracle that it got made at all. But those, I would say if I was going to tell anyone to check out a Japan Studio game that may not have played, and I imagine our audience has played them because that's who we are, Gravity Rush 1 and 2 are hidden gems in even by the standards of hidden gems on the last few PlayStations.
Yeah, because even if you look at games like The Last Guardian, like Japan Studio didn't really make that game.
No, they worked with Team Eco on it, but it wasn't a Japan Studio game, so to speak. Yep. But as far as I know, the Gravity Rushes were NAC. The NAC games were, I think. I don't like knack, but
I don't either. It's kind of a running joke. Some people do like it though.
Oh yes, I mean it's just
Yep.
Yeah, I can never tell quite how serious the knack fans are, but like makes you happy, makes you happy. For me,
I don't
for me
begrudge
it would
people
be
for things that make them happy for sure.
Yeah, for me it would be the Gravity Rush games, and in terms of they also got the they were kind of like pseudo publishers or whatever on a bunch of things I like that are just sort of the weird niche stuff. Hopefully that doesn't all go away. I'm thinking of stuff like like Puppeteer or the Echo Chromes, Patapon.
Yeah.
Aquanaut's Holiday, Hidden Memories, one of my favorite PlayStation 3 games that no one has. It never came here, and I had to import a Korean version to get an English version. Because that's how much I like scanning things underwater. Yeah, like I mean, it's a shame that like that's sort of where they've ended up, but like it makes financial sense that Sony wants to focus on the things that sell 10, 15 million copies rather than things that sell 800,000.
Yep, it does. Let's see. First of all, Lestevid, thank you for all the gift subs. That's awesome. Minority Games, thank you for the bits. You guys it's amazing. I appreciate everything that you guys do. I will answer one more question from Majora Tom 91. What are your expectations for the supposed Bethesda showcase Microsoft is planning later this month? You think the platforms for their future games past Deathloop and Ghostwire get confirmed or left ambiguous? Great question.
I'm expecting two things: Jack and shit.
Really? Because rumors are swirling that like we're getting like Starfield this year now.
I mean, I heard that. I don't believe it.
I don't believe it either at all.
Like, I think we will see it. Like, I mean, why else are you calling this?
I think we'll get a new trailer for Starfield at that event. Yep.
Yeah, why else are you calling this meeting if you don't have something to show from Bethesda Studios? Yep. Like, there's no way you do that without, like, you're in trouble enough. It's like, I would be very surprised if Starfield made it this year. I wouldn't argue with it if it did, but I also feel like
I'd be really happy if it did, but I just don't see it happening. I mean, based upon what Bethesda has said, I don't see it happening.
Exactly. Like Todd Howard has not given any indication that they're anywhere close to done.
Yeah. I mean, some stuff has leaked out that looks like it's pretty far along. I'll say that, but I don't think so.
How can you tell how far along a Bethesda game is by looking at a tiny piece of use of these things are so huge that you just don't. There's no way to tell what you're looking at half the time in terms of like general completion. I wouldn't even super shock me if they did say this year and then it just slips to next year. It's I guess it kind of depends what Microsoft wants to do, huh?
Yeah. And to his question about platforms, I mean, at this point, Sony just announced that Days Gone is coming to PC and a lot more of its games are coming to PC. All bets are kind of off right now for platforms. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, even, some of Bethesda's stuff continues to come to PlayStation. I just wouldn't.
Yeah,
I mean, at a delay, obviously, but
I do not think Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6 will come to PlayStation.
At all?
I think their internal Bethesda Studio stuff will be Xbox PC exclusive.
I could maybe see a year later.
Because otherwise, what did you buy them for?
Yeah, I mean, a year later, I could see it.
I don't think so.
Yeah. We'll see.
Given the
times
legs
they are changing, that's for sure.
I mean, you might have to change. Maybe that could change. Maybe the strategy could shift. But given the legs on Skyrim, you're crazy to ever let that go to a competitor's platform.
I mean, you should protect it for sure. Yep. So anyway, that's it. That's GameFace 246. We made it, people. I made it. Hopefully we'll be back next Tuesday. Hopefully I'll have it together more so we can start at 1 p.m. instead of 2. I know for people in Europe, it's getting pretty late for you guys. Thanks for hanging out with us. It seems like it's been a long time coming to get to this point where I could do another show. It feels good to have made it through an episode of GameFace. And thanks to Matt, who's been very patient over the last month, wondering what the heck is going on. And thanks to you guys, too, for giving me this time to get back on my feet and get to a place where I can do an episode of GameFace. I appreciate it. To everybody who donated, to everybody who just gave us Twitch Prime and bits and all this stuff, it makes a difference. I'll never forget what you guys did for me during this month. I'm not out of the woods yet, but obviously I felt good enough to do a 3-hour episode of GameFace, so I am way better than I was before, which means a lot. If you're listening to this show, and you're probably maybe you're not because you may have unsubscribed to the GameFace podcast feed at this point, wondering if the show ended, But if you stuck with us and you're out there, we'd really appreciate if you could go to patreon.com/sifted. That's SIFTD, and pledge to support the show. We need it. We need financial support to keep this going. I need it because I can't keep working the hours that I've been working. It literally almost killed me. And so I can't do it. And we need, that work still needs to be done, and I need to be able to pay people to do the work. So please, if you're watching the show on YouTube, help us out, man. We need it. We need the help. There's every other Patreon out there. They're making tons of money. We actually need the help. We need the money. So I'd really appreciate it. But again, thanks to everyone for sticking with us, everyone on our Patreon for being patient, all the kind words. It meant so much, and it helped me. It literally helped me get through these last 4 weeks that I've been dealing with this crap. So on behalf of Matt, who you can find on Twitter at @mkyle, I'm Shane Satterfield. You can find me on Twitter at Dinfire. And if you can't afford to help us and you just want to know when the show's going to go up for free, you can follow Sifted on Twitter at Sifted Games. So have yourselves a great evening. We'll see you next Tuesday. GameFace is up and out.